Not every geek with a Commodore 64 can hack into NASA.
This one's dedicated to all the hackers. Yo. Even out, settle scores quick. Our disaster recovery requires even more discs. Put your bytes up, prove it or you forfeit. Got my C64 and we blew it into orbit. M. Bison with 8 straight perfects. Overload emotions make hate break circuits. In case you heard, it's a name fake service. Optimize our runtime to escape verdicts. Got an integer scope flow that they can't sign. Passing code, didn't sanitize command lines, landmine. So before they'll see me after, I'm advice star, courage, woke plus velociraptor. Don't prove we're human unless we really have to. My team built schemes and destroy, recapture. Hate what they see, finish this chapter. By the way, we're not any geeks, we hack into NASA. Drink all the booze, hack all the things. Drink all the booze, hack all the things. Drink all the booze, hack all the things. Got this vodka and this Red Bull, they still give me wings. So we drink all the booze, hack all the things. Drink all the booze, hack all the things. Drink all the booze, hack all the things. 0 through 3, we're in every single ring. I'm just waiting till my BlackBerry dies, cause I'll replace it with the Raspberry Pi. Don't compare to this track, it makes everything they said dull. Neutralize any threat, turn Red Skull to Dev Null. They killed virus writers that we mentioned, but instead they ascended to the VX heavens to reincarnate as live wires. Still inside we hide ciphers and sign device drivers. Which school will we hit next? They didn't learn the format, so we've got a print F. Next step is a chin check. Freestyles that I spit best, they didn't decrypt yet. I crush internet MCs and rhyme battles. Get your Wi-Fi tackled, hacked by pineapple. I don't think you'll like my Snapple, cause I popped it with vodka in a cyanide capsule. We drink all the booze, hack all the things. Drink all the booze, hack all the things. Drink all the booze, hack all the things. Got this vodka and this Red Bull, they still give me wings. So we drink all the booze, hack all the things. Drink all the booze, hack all the things. Drink all the booze, hack all the things.
You know there's gonna be security, right?
First we drink all the booze, then hack all the things. Then backdoor the firmware on anything you bring, regardless of the hardware, service or encoding. Connected to the internet and someone's gonna own it. This is for the pirates that clap and love the sound. Attacking from the cloud, then we're back in underground. There's no masking from us now. We pop tornadoes around the globe, track and hunt you down. Hacked on schedule, add it to your calendar. Devices online, here comes another challenger. State infiltrated, so undercover. This is for my comrades who stare at the debuggers and trace every buffer. Examining the code flow, haven't been to sleep, better pop another no-dose. I think I'll need a planet-sized urn, cause some men just wanna watch the world burn. Your turn.
Stay out of jail.
Technologically possible, yeah.
Drink all the booze, hack all the things. Drink all the booze, hack all the things. Drink all the booze, hack all the things. Got this vodka and this Red Bull, they still give me wings. So we drink all the booze, hack all the things. Drink all the booze, hack all the things. Drink all the booze, hack all the things. 0 through 3, we're in every single ring.
I mean, these servers have more firewalls than the devil's bedroom.
Hack all the things. Drink all the booze. Hack all the things. Hack all the things. Hack all the things. Things. 0 through 3, we're in every single ring. Hack all the things.
Yeah, well, good luck, man.
They still give me wings. Drink all the things. Drink all the vodka and pack all the booze. Drink all the booze. Hack all the hackers. Hack all the
Ladies and gentlemen and everyone around, welcome to UHC!
Yes, we are officially back
for UHC on Easter time. So welcome everyone and good night. Not only myself, but also UHC is back from a week off. We are very sorry, everyone. We did not have UHC last week. It was for a very, very, very good reason. We took, we took a week in memory of COVID victims around the world. Situation is kind of crazy. A lot of countries are already having vaccination, and other countries are suffering more than ever because it's variants. So we know it's a very complicated subject. So we are very thankful for everyone understanding, everything that's going through. But we are back for celebration time tonight. So Easter Sunday, and we're gonna have all of our past winners from the qualifying round from past week are now allocated in tonight's match. So we just grabbed everyone from the qualifying round and put everyone on tonight's match. So just so y'all understand a little bit. I am Marina Chavada. For those who don't know, I'm your host tonight. I am actually from Brazil, but I'm staying in the US. That's why you're probably going to see me struggle a little bit with English throughout the night, but please bear with me because UHC is super fun. Ultimate Hacking Championship, CTF, is run by Hacking Esports, which is also a Brazilian company. The creator, Igor Rincon, founded Hacking Esports and turned UHC into the first CTF. The idea is to transform and battle for making CTF a recognized official esports. So that should be awesome, and to see in just a few years, maybe even less than that, who knows. So we have this esports format with live commentators on the CTF tonight. It is a 3-hour CTF, or it's also around 3 to 4 flags. So whichever happens first, if a player gets all the flags first, or if the 3 hours run out, then the CTF is over. For those who are not used to what a CTF is, bear with us. You're going to understand as we go through the championship tonight. It is a great place for you to meet new people, not only to learn. It's obviously awesome to have CTF as a learning platform here on UHC, but you can also meet a bunch of people not only here on the chat, but throughout all of our social medias. We have the Twitter, we have Instagram and LinkedIn, and we mainly advertise our Discord server, because on the Discord server is where you can meet all the players. You can meet all the fans as well, and it's where you can actually play UHC, not this finals, not the broadcasted version here on Twitch, but you can play the qualifying rounds there on the Discord server. So if you just want to play around and train yourself on CTF and get to know a little bit, or if you actually want to qualify yourself for the finals here on Twitch every week, the Discord server is where you should go. And you can just ask for the link for our very rude bot here in their chat. You just type !Discord, and the rude bot will give you the link for the public Discord. Now, the public Discord is very different from the private Discord server, which is what we're gonna show tonight on the match. So the finals, the UHC finals that we broadcast here on Twitch, the Discord server that we're going to show, no one else have access except us, past hosts, and the players themselves. So, go find us on our Discord server, go be a part of UHC. And I would also like to thank a lot for our sponsors and partners here. As you can see, a bunch of the little logos. I'm going to pretend that I'm looking at them, but I'm actually not. I have no idea where I'm looking at. So we have Crowsec, which is a Brazilian company, and also Bug Hunt and Hecate, also Brazilian companies. Crowsec is an amazing content company made for web hacking and pen testing content. Also Kadu, which is who is from Crowsec. He is the actual monster that puts together not only the qualifying round, but this final CTF that we're going to see the players playing here every week. So, and they're different from themselves. So, yes, it is 2 CTFs per week. This dude is insane. We're gonna get to know a little bit about him at the end of the stream. We're gonna interview not only the staff but also the winner to have the walkthrough of the challenges. But we would also like to thank Bug Hunt, which is a bug bounty company from Brazil, and they're amazing. Hecate Inc., which is my own company, and we do marketing and communications and trainings for information security. And of course, Hack the Box. Yes, we're gonna have very special things from Hack the Box happening tonight. I will not give y'all any spoilers per now, but stay tuned because I'm gonna announce a lot of very amazing prizes throughout tonight. Okay, so let me see what's going on in the Brazilian live stream. Oh, just so you know, UHC happens in 2 channels at the same time. So we are also having the Brazilian version with the Brazilian hosts speaking Portuguese from Brazil and the Hacking Esports channel here on Twitch, and we're kind of the English counterpart of it. So just so you know, that's why I keep looking at a bunch of different screens, because I have all of everything happening in my head at the same time. All right, but enough about everything. And I think it's time for me to bring the one that y'all missed the most. I know you didn't miss me at all, but you did miss him. Here's my beautiful husband in Tatey. Hi, baby.
Hey, and to be clear, I think if anything, they missed the dad jokes. They didn't necessarily miss me.
Do you want to introduce yourself for everyone that don't know you? If there's anyone that don't know you.
I'm sure most people probably don't know me. My name is Int80. I am the rapper in a group called Dual Core. I hack computers and make rap music about it. We have a number of Dual Core albums that we have put out over the years. You may have caught me playing a show at any of the major hacking conferences like DEF CON or DerbyCon when it existed, BrewCon over in Europe. Ode, I wish you were my husband. I wish we were husbands together, maybe in a different life. And what up? I saw
You're very welcome at our house, sweetie. I'm not jealous.
I saw Nahamsek in the chat also asking if we can take the scoreboard down already. That's a facility of UHC. You can spend your channel points that you get for free from watching to do things like take down the scoreboard or buy screen time or get dad jokes from me. I basically run DJ AAS. That's Dad Jokes as a Service. And so, yeah, that's pretty much it, I guess. I like I said, I hack computers, and I'm excited to be here for UHC.
Yes, and tonight we're also gonna have an amazing special guest here with us, and I'm gonna welcome her. We have Itzen, or Amy as well. So welcome, Itzen.
Hey, I'm glad to be here. My name is Amy. I also go by Itzen online pretty much everywhere. And I've been playing CTF for about 6-7 years now. So it's a lot of fun to see it turning into something like this, especially since for me, probably one of my favorite parts of CTF is actually watching people try to figure out their way through the challenges or, learn something new from a challenge. So making that into something that we can share with everyone else is a lot of fun. So I'm really happy to be here tonight.
Awesome. And what would you say is your favorite category of CTF challenge?
Oh, I usually focus on either web or pwning, which I know is very, different categories, but that happens to be both where everything intersects for me.
Yeah. And so on the pwn side, is there a particular architecture that you feel more comfortable with?
Well, I can look at anything. I mean, of course, everyone's more familiar with the things they run. So x86, 64, etc. But, I've spent a good amount of time working on ARM systems as well, both in the CTF world and in real life.
That's awesome.
A lot of fun. It's especially cool when you're able to model real life systems in something like a CTF. That's something that I try to seek out very often.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. CTF is such like a fun environment to experiment and try new things in. And so like at work, I might be hesitant to try a new technique or something because I don't want to accidentally bring down a system or, damage or disrupt a service. But in CTF, it's like anything goes pretty much. A great opportunity to experiment.
Yeah, it's a great sandbox for playing around with technology you normally wouldn't. And also just trying to break stuff, without getting in too much trouble.
And so what are the favorite components of your toolkit for pwning, for binary exploitation?
Well, of course, you need your reverse engineering tools. Even though it's a pwn category, you're going to be digging deep into the binary. So you have to use things like Binary Ninja or IDA or Ghidra. Also, things like pwn tools, whether that's like for your debugging setup or just writing your exploits. It's very helpful to have all of those resources sort of at your fingertips when you start a challenge. So you don't have to spend a lot of time messing around or digging through different libraries to get something that works.
Absolutely. I'm right there with you. Huge fan of pwn tools as well. I've used it for years, and it's amazing how it'll abstract so many things for you, and you can quickly get to a solution as opposed to having to like debug, some other code that, like in my case, that I may have written that wasn't behaving accordingly.
Yeah, it's definitely good to have reliable tools, especially when you're in a very competitive CTF, like an attack defend, or in this case where we have a very small amount of time. So you have to be really efficient with everything that you do.
Yeah, and great call on the point you brought up earlier about having everything set up and ready to go. And we've definitely seen players that get into UHC, they start playing, and then all of a sudden they need to install some kind of tool. And then, they're in a VPN, so they may not have direct internet egress, or in pulling the tool down, they've got to do like some additional configuration and setup. And all of that are seconds off the clock that you're losing while the rest of the players are progressing towards the next flag.
Yeah, for sure.
Sorry. So my bad. I kind of trailed off. My point where I was going with that was a question around then, like, what do you do for repeatable infrastructure? Do you do like VMs? Do you do like AMIs in AWS? Do you do like Docker files?
Oh yeah, for sure. VMs are usually my go-to, especially since you can do things like take snapshots really easily. So if you're worried about messing something up, you can just take a snapshot and do whatever you need to do, like maybe install a package that might break your entire system. But also servers are very useful, especially when you're dealing with some of the web categories where you have to do things like connect back to your server or host certain HTML files, things like that. So being able to have an infrastructure like that as well, I found can be very useful.
Awesome. Well, let's see the players.
Yes, let's get to know a little bit about the players of tonight's match. And we have Matheus Pimentel from Brazil as our first player. He is a veteran, has not won a UHC yet, so we are pretty anxious to see if this is Matheus' night. All right, and then we have My Donut from Canada. Welcome back, My Donut. I think it's his third or fourth match.
I was thinking second or third, maybe, and I played in a CTF with My Donut maybe like a month or so ago with Nahamsek running it, and it was a blast. My Donut really cool, did really well. I think My Donut actually won that particular CTF and was very kind and threw me a root shell. So very, very good to,
awesome.
Very happy to see them.
All right, welcome back, My Donut, and we also have this real Bert. Bert, welcome back again. Also another player that has been in around 3 or 4 matches as well. So not a newcomer anymore. I cannot call you guys newcomers anymore. All right, we have Bigos as well from Brazil, and Bigos is a past winner. So yes, another veteran here from UHC. And let's see. Okay, so we also have Celesian playing tonight. 6-time champion, may ring a bell. Very young, extremely talented. You see.
Is that? I think Celesian's a 7-time winner now. I want to say. I think their last victory put them at 7. But still,
yeah, I'm gonna stick with what the staff wrote. He has a very bad with numbers. All right, our next player is Wade, another big-time champion from UHC, a 4-time champion here. And I hope Wade and Celesian go head-to-head and, bring us a little bit of entertainment instead of just running through everything in like 30 minutes, as they usually do. So it would be nice to have a little time to chat around and to watch the CTF guys. We also have Ricardo. If I'm not mistaken, Ricardo is also a veteran. Yes, he just changed the nickname and added a little weird thing at the end. But yes, Ricardo is another veteran here from UHC, also from Brazil. And this is all of our players, I guess. We are missing 2 of them, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, we usually have 10. But
Yeah.
Again, this is like we had the week off last week, and so these are the players who qualified 2 weeks ago, essentially. So I think maybe of the initial 10 qualifiers, 3 were not able to make it for tonight.
Oh, sorry, I just saw that my microphone is a little bit too loud. Is this a little bit better?
Yeah, I think you're good.
Okay. Sorry, everyone, I get excited. So let me double check. Yes, the staff has already raised the flag of the CTF. So we have started. Let me share here my Discord real quick with y'all. Should take just a quick minute.
And so each of the players are in their own room here, and with your channel points, again, these are the free ones that you get, by joining us here on UHC. You can bet on the players with your channel points as well, and so that can stack up your channel points at an even faster multiplication rate. Do you want to? Do you want to walk everyone through the players for betting?
Yes, there's as I was gonna say, there's already people talking about the betting here on the chat. So yes, for those who don't know, we do have a betting system tonight. You do not have to bet real money. You can bet Twitch points. So here on Twitch, if you just stay here on the chat and if you talk in the chat, you get Twitch points, and you can bet them here on the Twitch channel. If you just scroll down, you will find a place for bets, and there you have all the players in their specific rooms, their specific Discord rooms, because you don't use the player's name, you use their Discord room number. And yes, I'm gonna tell you what the Discord room number is, and we have Mateus in the first room. So Mateus is number 1 for betting. My Donut is number 2 for betting. Real Bert is on room number 3. Bigos is 4. Celesian is 5. Wade is 6. And Ricardo is 7. So this is our players tonight here on the Discord server. So if you want to bet your Twitch points on who's gonna win tonight's match, you just have to do that very quickly. The betting system is only open for the first hour of tonight's match, so you gotta choose your winner, because whenever the bets are closed, well, tough luck. And that's just it. You can bet as you're seeing everyone here doing. You can write exclamation point points just to get to know how much points do you have, and then after you choose one of the players' room number here, you can exclamation point bet and choose the room and how many Twitch points do you want to bet. And also, we also have the Twitch store with a lot of awesome stuff that you can also buy tips. You can buy hints, so you can actually give the player hints throughout the CTF. You can buy the scoreboard down, so you can bring the scoreboard down by buying it. Just to mess around with the CTF strategy. As it goes down for around 5 to 10 minutes. It's not too long. And you can also buy a player's screen time. So if you think we're not showing your preferred player for a while, and you want to see their screen, or if you want to help a friend of yours that's playing tonight by showing someone else's screen, you can also buy screen time, among other stuff, among other fun stuff on our Twitch store. So just scroll down here on Twitch and you see it.
Dope. I wanted to give some shout outs. I saw we got rated. Schmers Kex joined with a party of 4, which is awesome. Folks that are joining, you are watching UHC. It is a live hacking competition broadcast in esports format. And then we also got some folks subscribing with Prime. So California, Ansi, good to see you. And Sherpa, thank you so much for subscribing to us with Prime. Really appreciate y'all joining us and being here. And so, as Marina pointed out, the CTF has started. We are watching Mateus currently, and it looks like Mateus is setting up some Nmap scans, kind of starting off with some initial enumeration just for common ports, looking for web stuff. It looked like port 80 and 443. Common ports you might find for a web app. And then also looks like they're trying to pull down Rust scan as well. And kind of apropos to our previous discussion, Amy, about how you want everything configured and ready to run because you've got this like limited amount of time for the CTF. You don't want to be spending that time doing system administration and installing new tools while everybody else is working towards the next flag.
Yeah, and especially in this format where every second can really count when it comes to getting in before the other players, especially when it seems like we have so many very skilled opponents here who have won previous competitions. So everyone's really up against people who know what they're doing here.
Yeah, it definitely feels like time is of the essence given our field of competitors in this week. So I see Mateus is running Rust scan, and I've used it only a few times. I know like I generally tend to do something like mass scan first to find open ports, and then I hand off to like Nmap to do like more enriched service scans. What do you like for your process of enumeration as far as like at the service level?
Well, you know, I haven't really played around with too many of these fancy newer tools like Rust scan, but I've mostly just stuck with Nmap or trying to find specific services which I think are going to be available.
Yeah, it's tried and true, right? Nmap's been around for so long, and they've got the scripts library, which can be really helpful for giving additional information about the ports that you're finding. Yeah,
for sure.
I will say the tooling in Rust is like, it's been pretty nice. Like Rust scan itself is pretty solid. Ferox Buster, which is Oday's favorite enumeration tool for web apps, is like really, really fast, and it has become my go-to. It doesn't always work for all of my use cases, but when it does work, it's pretty dope. I'm a big fan there. What do you like for web app, like surface, attack surface enumeration?
I think usually my go-to is just using things built into like Burp, for example. I don't usually spend a lot of time just spidering or scanning. I usually try to find parts of the web application that look like they might have weird edge behavior. But of course, when you're limited on time, it can be difficult to get lucky and find that piece of the code that looks bad right away. So being able to spider or try different things that have worked in the past is a good way to do that. So sort of looking at previous vulnerabilities, I like to keep a big list of things to try. And then you can, of course, automate that some too. Like, is there going to be source code disclosure? Can we try like off by /? All these kind of common things, especially in CTF challenges that you can do fairly quickly.
Yeah, that's awesome. Great call in building your own tooling or augmenting to like chain a lot of the common tasks together, right? And that kind of gives you a leg up when speed is very important. And I'm with you in that like you don't necessarily need tooling to like quickly map out an application. I think the more that you do a particular specialty domain, like the more that you pwn things or the more that you do web apps, you kind of build that pattern matching that you're talking about, right? And so you see like, oh yeah, I've seen apps like this before with this kind of behavior, and this seems like something that I want to look into, as opposed to being like, okay, here's a page. And so paying attention, taking good notes as you're like getting started and learning is so valuable, because it ends up building that intuition that gets you to the right place faster.
Yeah, I actually, I used to keep what I called the big list of web, which was just a list of everything that you should try immediately when you encounter web application. But of course, if you're in a situation where you don't know a whole lot about this target, like in this case where you just are given IP and it says, figure out where the flag is and attack it. It can still be really hard to apply that stuff. And so it still is a very good idea to master the tools to help enumerate the attack surface in the first place, especially in this kind of competition.
Absolutely. And where I really subscribe to the theory about like intuition and pattern matching is in reversing. And so when I started reverse engineering, like I took some binary and I threw it in like IDA or like in Ollie debug, right? And all I see is just like all of these assembly instructions, and I'm like, what is this? what does this mean to me? And so what I figured out right away was what I wanted to know was what not to look at. Right, I'm trying to get to like the place of like where does it check the serial number, or where does it see, where does the target see if it's been registered or something, and that's what I want to find. Not like, do I need to look at how a library gets loaded in and then a particular function gets imported or something. Like that's not of interest to me. And so figuring out what not to look at is like the thing there.
Yeah, being able to filter out which parts of an application aren't going to be interesting can be a very important skill, especially when you're given large applications or large binaries where you could really get sucked down a rabbit hole for a long time.
Yeah. It's always a bummer when you like start digging into a function and then you see like, oh, this is just like a different compilation of some library function that I don't care about. And you're like, I just wasted time.
Just so everyone know, I told y'all in the beginning that we would have a Hack the Box surprise tonight, and I'm ready to announce it if y'all want to know. So tonight, we're gonna have prizes for the top 3 champions of the match. So we're not gonna stop at just one player. We're gonna go for 3 winners tonight. So the 3 winners that either have all of the flags or have more points in the scoreboard at the end of the night after 3 hours of championship. So whichever happens first. And the prizes for the top 3, the first player to get the highest score in the scoreboard tonight will get 100-pound swag card, plus a Pro Lab of choice for a month. And the second place is going to have a 50-pound swag card, plus a VIP for 6 months. And the third place will have a 25-pound swag card, plus VIP for 3 months on Hack the Box, which is pretty cool. So thank you very much, Hack the Box, for giving prizes to our top 3 and making tonight's match way more interesting because we're going to have 3 winners.
Yeah, that is fantastic. And Hack the Box is one of my favorite platforms. One of my goals for this year is to learn more about container security. And so the way that I quantify that goal is that I want to get full pwns on all of the boxes on Hack the Box that have containers in them. And so far, pretty good progress, but I love the platform. It's great. I love that you can filter and say, I'm specifically interested in systems with like these operating systems or with these tags on them. And so Hack the Box has been huge in helping me learn more about container security this year.
Yeah, it seems like they've done a really good job of covering a wide variety of different targets and also different topics.
Yeah, and I feel like the kill chains are generally pretty direct or pretty straightforward in that they make sense, I should say. Sometimes they're not straightforward, and I'll go down the wrong rabbit hole. But like they, it's pretty rare that I hit something where I'm like, this doesn't make sense. This is totally wildly unrealistic. And so I've really enjoyed playing Hack the Box. And it's not easy to always to reliably make kill chains that are sensible. And I feel like UHC has done that really well with Kadu, and Kadu being our main challenge author here. It seems like every single week the kill chains are usually pretty straightforward and that they make sense. And there's always some kind of like new technology. I always love, there's something that I learn every single week here, and I've been playing CTFs for years. So it's an awesome experience.
Yeah, I definitely see crafting CTF challenges as kind of like an art. You're really trying to, lead someone down a path that you're creating, and you're hoping that they'll learn something new as they go through and they encounter new technologies and they have to figure out new ways to get around whatever they've encountered.
Yeah, we've seen some really interesting implementations and stuff that has shown up in real life vulnerabilities further down the road. So that's always kind of neat. It's like, how could you know about that?
Yeah, well, kudos for being able to make so many different challenges for this event over and over. I definitely would have a hard time creating that many challenges. So it's definitely a really good job.
Yeah, thanks. Kadu making 2 unique environments every single week. So the qualifying round that's open to everybody on Saturdays. And so this is where Marina was talking about. You can join us on Discord. You can play in the qualifiers on Saturdays. It is a completely unique environment. And then on Sunday, we get a completely new environment with the top 10 players from Saturday. And so if you wanted, you could play 2 separate environments every single week by participating in UHC for all the folks that are out there watching and interested.
Blue Dragon Sec just asked, I'm still curious as to what happens if no flags are found within the game time. As usual, you always bring your marvelous and charming chaotic energy, Blue Dragon Sec. Thank you so much for being with us. We probably will just postpone the prizes.
I hope we don't find out. I hope there's always somebody getting getting flags. Let's see. So we're watching My Donut right now, and I see My Donut has a mass scan that they're looking at potentially. And so I wonder, I saw somebody was looking at like LDAP search earlier, and it seems like maybe the services that are available are not like as straightforward as usual. So on the Rust scan there on the top left, it looks like port 53 is open, but then on a separate IP, it looked like LDAP, I think it was 389, and also 53. To me, that says maybe it's something like a DNS server or like an Active Directory or something like that, like maybe a domain controller or an LDAP server. And I guess there's Nmap there on the bottom left. I don't know, Amy, what are you seeing here?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing a couple of different ports coming up here. The fact that we see so many different, let's see, it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of stuff that's coming back. It seems like most of these results are fairly limited. But yeah, I mean, it seems like it's still kind of at the stage where you have to figure out what part of the box is going to be the target.
Yeah, absolutely. And it looks like the screen got a little pixelated there. Why don't we switch over to Bert and see how Bert's screen is looking? Excuse me. And on Bert's screen, we do see Rust scan as well. And I think the initial hint here for the players, like the challenge, was actually just a CIDR. Like I think it was like this /24 in the 10 IP space. And so I think that's why we're seeing the players kind of poke around looking for, number one, like systems that are online, and then number two, like what services are available from those systems.
Yeah, it really doesn't give you a whole lot to go on, just having, a range of IPs to scan and trying to pick out which of those is going to be actually interesting for your target and which of those is just normal network infrastructure, which is not very important. It's going to be part of the challenge.
And if I were to guess, at least on the CTF side, LDAP is not something that I see commonly in CTFs. And it's pretty rare that I use it at work. And so I feel like every time that I have to do something with LDAP, I have to go back to my notes and almost relearn everything that I've learned in the past to be able to meaningfully interact. But you end up with these like really gnarly like LDAP search queries built out. And one thing that I just thought about here is if you've got an LDAP server, LDAP injection like is a thing. Maybe that's where they're going in this particular challenge potentially.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that like once or twice before. I personally don't know a whole lot about LDAP, but I've encountered it here and there in CTFs, usually in the context of being able to perform some sort of search in the LDAP itself to reveal information about other parts of other users.
Yeah, exactly. LDAP being like a a centralized directory, and if you can connect to it without authentication, it's possible that you might be able to dump some useful details about the people who have the accounts that have access to the system, and then from there you might be able to find some authentication mechanism that will let you in, or maybe even potentially authenticate as one of those accounts to the LDAP service, and then dump even more info out. But yeah, it looks like it's a pretty slim pickings thus far on the attack surface. Just like in the other player screen, we're seeing only DNS and LDAP available thus far. So I don't know, like I would be thinking on the DNS side, maybe something like zone transfers, or maybe doing some like subdomain, brute forcing. I don't know.
Potentially there's some sensitive information in the DNS records that are being used. So maybe trying to pull down all the records you can, or see if you can do a zone transferal is a good way to poke around at those. But again, everything uses DNS. So it's hard to tell if this is actually going to be fruitful, or if it's just a required component to make the networking work in the first place.
Yeah, great point. And I had totally forgotten that, but I've played CTFs where there is a flag in like the text record, for example. So if you query the text record, maybe you get back this like, base 64 encoded response or something like that then decodes to a flag. And I totally forgotten about that because it's just so uncommon.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually happening more and more in real software, just due to the fact that you have all kinds of stuff being used in the domain, like your email authentication stuff, or like if you have certain certificates, you're seeing more and more trust being put into the actual DNS records.
Yeah, absolutely. Great point. SPF stuff can end up as text records in DNS. And same with like Keybase, for example, right? That's like one way that you can authenticate yourself and your profile. You can say like, yep, you have this text record. Keybase will then check it and say, okay, cool, you are the person you're claiming to be.
Yep. So even if there's no flag, it may give you a hint towards what other things might be something you could target.
Yeah.
But again, it's hard to know unless you try
right.
whether or not it's actually going to give you anything useful in terms of the CTF.
Yeah. And so I'm trying to think for like CTF tooling and even like just pen test tooling, I guess, around DNS. I feel like I never poke at it enough, or I never need to poke at it more than what I just do with basics with like dig and NSLOOKUP and host. But I guess on the subdomain enumeration side, there might be some good tooling out there. What do you like as far as poking at DNS servers?
Usually I just end up using something like dig. Like,
yeah.
Most of the stuff that you're going to do with DNS is something that you can access through dig or NSLOOKUP or a few other of those command line utilities. I personally don't know any fancier tools for that, but usually gets the job done.
Right. Yeah. And those utilities are kind of following that Linux model of like do one thing but do it really well. And so you end up with a specific tool, but it's for that specific set of tasks.
Yeah, and we can actually see on the screen that they were looking at how to do something like a zone transfer, poking around at the same sort of things we were just talking about.
Yeah. And I'm curious if any other recon is happening. Okay, so it looks like maybe there's an Nmap scan in that top left. But one of the things that IPSec will talk about and other hosts have also discussed is that you should always try to have some kind of recon running all the time. And then that way it's something that you can at least go look at if you begin to like run out of options. And so I guess it looks like here maybe Rust scan is still running on the bottom right, so that's good. And then the Nmap scan in the top left. And maybe those are just the only services, at which point you got to start digging into those services with more particular queries.
Yeah, when you hit that point and you can't find any other parts to the challenge, then it's time to start digging in and learning about whatever the component is, and maybe there's something you didn't know, like maybe you didn't know about doing zone transferals.
Yeah, great point. And for me personally, in a CTF, I actually like it when there's a small set of attack surface, right? Because then it's like, okay, cool, this is what I have to focus on. But when you get back like 50 open services, sometimes you're like, oh, like where do I start? Or like when you look at a web app and there's like a ton of different things in it, you're like, okay, where do I start?
Oh yeah, it's the two sides there. You don't want to see no responses, but you also don't want to see a million responses, because then it's going to be so much effort to try to figure out which one is the attack surface you actually are interested in.
Yeah, and kind of the same thing with like with pen testing like professionally, right? Is like when you start hacking stuff and you start making progress, you're like awesome, but then there's always this part in the back of my mind that's like, oh no, this is going to add like 20 pages to the report. So you're like mentally tracking how big the report is growing as you continue hacking things.
Yeah.
Let's see. It looks like I guess we're watching Bigos right now, and it looks like Bigos had a PHP info.
Yeah, I just saw that too. So I guess we have potentially some PHP running here under our CGI bin. And pfSense as well. I'm not familiar with, but I thought pfSense was like a network device, like a router or something, right? Yeah, it could potentially be that what they're looking at here is some sort of routing device or other network infrastructure, which has, the ports open to be able to actually talk to the web network from their connection.
Nice. I still haven't caught the actual CIDR that the first clue or the first challenge was saying. So I wonder if it was like maybe even a bigger subnet, like a /16, and that's why it's taking even longer for players to find targets.
Yeah, I haven't gotten a chance to see it either. But with the amount of mapping that's going on, I would assume that it's not a small CIDR.
Yeah. And I guess it looks like Bigos is trying some just default passwords, which is kind of a thing that I always try. I like to do, admin and guest and admin password. Those always seem to hopefully work out somehow.
Yeah, especially with those kind of embedded devices, more often than not, there'll be some sort of default credentials, which of course can lead to, being part of a botnet or something like that if people trying those credentials hit your box.
Yep, and here we see exactly Bigos looking up online for default credentials, and that's a great approach when you find something that looks like it could be an embedded device. Or it's just something weird that you haven't seen before. Starting with a query for default credentials can be a great way to get access.
Yeah, and then I'd also, of course, take a look and see if there were any recent vulnerabilities which may be unpatched in that device. Very often you see things like command injection in embedded routers.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, my ears perk up every time I get to like something that's like a network testing functionality of an embedded device. And so, like right away behind the scenes, it's like running ping and then whatever you give it, or like traceroute and then like whatever you give it. So if you give it some kind of injection character, usually it's going to run whatever you tell it to run next. And we're seeing in the Discord that the .65 IP is out of scope. And so I don't know what that is, but I guess that means that that Bigos has to walk back the pfSense stuff. I guess the pfSense is not in scope, unfortunately.
Yeah, but it still looks like there's the PHP info here.
Yeah,
which is on a different IP, so that will potentially be in scope unless refs say otherwise. So there's still at least a PHP box here, and PHP info is always very nice because it gives you so much information about the version running. So whenever I see a challenge give me PHP info, I always check to see if it's like an outdated version of PHP or if there's certain extensions which are enabled, which might add vulnerabilities to the service.
Yeah, and one thing that I think about in the context of CTFs is like what was newsworthy about a particular technology. In this case, like what was newsworthy about PHP in recent history, maybe within the last 6 months or so. And one thing that I remember was 2 different commits to the PHP Git repo.
Yes, yeah. So that would be definitely a topical challenge here to see if you can actually use that backdoor which was introduced.
Yeah, and I think if I remember right, wasn't it like you had to pass a specific user agent? Like I think if you pass like Zerodium and then whatever came after Zerodium, it would get executed as like just RCE. But you had to misspell user agent a particular way.
Yeah, and I actually remember in the commit there was like a code review comment that said, "Is this intentionally misspelled?"
I really wish that they would have done refer and then just fixed it.
Yeah, well, yeah.
It still bothers me. Like to this day, I'll see refer and I'm like, that's not spelled correctly.
So I would be interested in seeing if the version of PHP here is recent enough to potentially have that backdoor in it, or if it is an older or newer version where it's not there.
Yeah, and my understanding is that the backdoor is like the commits happen, but I don't think that they got baked into like an actual published release, if I remember correctly. I think they got caught first, right?
Yeah, I think they caught it fairly quickly, but it's still potential. There's still the potential that this is a custom build that includes that backdoor, which might be one reason they'd give us that PHP information. So I'm a very, I think that the fact that there is PHP info there is probably a good indicator that there's some clue inside of that.
Yep, I'm right there with you. We talk about like metagaming, right? Where you're not really playing the game, but you're playing like how the game is supposed to be played or how it might be played. And so I think that is a definite metagaming aspect where it's like, yep, this easily could be in the context of a CTF, a custom built PHP, just because we had that recent backdoor issue that was amusing. Let's see. So Bigos is poking around. I haven't seen anybody else that has found the PHP info yet. I'm curious. What if we? Let's see, Marina. You're looking at Wade now, and Wade also has found the PHP info, so that's good.
Yeah, it looks like a couple of the contestants have managed to find the PHP service, and I've actually seen at least one other person who has found the PHP info here as well with Das.
Awesome. And it looks like on this box, this .191, it appears to be a Windows host based on the path and the details we're seeing there about the environment.
And I'm also seeing Des here looking through and trying to find control F, trying to find if there's any references to UHC, and there actually is one, but it's just the user domain. So it's kind of an interesting trying to see. I personally, something that I like to do when I encounter PHP info is diff it against another version that I have, just to see if there's anything that stands out immediately in terms of changes.
Yeah, great call. One of the things that I like to recommend to folks is to use something like Docker or Vagrant if you don't need to necessarily pay for it, but some way to get a comparable environment up quickly. And so to your point, Amy, of like, okay, here we see it's version, I forget what, 7.3.27, right? So could I just like quickly run a Docker container of 7.3.27, same version, set up a PHP info file, browse to that, and then do the diffing, like you said, to point out things that might be of interest.
Yeah, and that also works great if you have, for example, a leaked config or something like that to determine if there's any custom configuration and help you prevent overlooking things. So that's a technique I use all the time when I encounter differently configured web services.
Yeah, fantastic point. And I'll mention, kind of going back to the metagaming stuff, we've seen editions of UHC where a player wins simply because they found the UHC flag first. Like they had, like burp was like filtering for it or whatever. So it came back in like an HTTP response, and maybe it was like as an HTML comment, or maybe it is in the mix of the PHP info output. But because the player found it first, they ended up winning. And so the way that the scoreboard works is you can end up tied on the same score as other players. But if you got to a particular flag first, then you end up higher on the scoreboard ranking.
Yeah, and there's definitely all kinds of tricks you can pull out, especially when timing is such an important factor in a competition, to try to potentially detect which of the services may be modified in that kind of way.
Yeah. And so, Amy, you're part of, and forgive me if I'm pronouncing it incorrectly, but like RPISec, right?
Yes, yeah, that is the CTF team that I've played on ever since I started doing CTF, and it's has a lot of really smart people. We've gone to DEF CON CTF several times, so a lot of fun.
And so, what is your experience like as far as playing on RPI Sec, and then in comparison to like how other teams that are also very serious about CTF, like what's the approach like there? Because it seems like it's like the major leagues versus the rest of us that are just playing for fun.
Well, one of the important strategies you have to employ is organization. You have to make sure that everyone who is working on a challenge can stay organized, give enough information to each other to also not step on their toes, prevent repeating the same sort of research into whatever challenge. And then there's also a factor of determining which challenges you think that you can do based on your skill sets. So trying to match individual skill sets to the challenges, and also knowing when a challenge is not within your reach. Potentially in the rest of the time that's left in a CTF, you might be able to solve a different one if you give up on the one you're currently working on. And that's always such a hard thing to do, especially if you spent hours and hours on it. But if it's one of the skills that we found is very important when it comes to trying to compete in these extremely competitive, long format CTFs, like you see in any of those CTF finals going on like CTF time, things like that.
Yeah, wow. The excellent points there. The communication skills totally make sense. And I don't think that we've had any hosts talk about how important those communication skills are, especially in the context of a team when you've got to coordinate a number of people all working towards that common goal of solving all of the challenges. Yeah,
and it's also, especially right now when everyone's remote, it's very hard to coordinate and make sure that everyone, if you want to go to sleep, that you have all of your information, anything important, anything you think another person should look at so someone can continue in your place. There's just a lot of organization that goes into being able to play at those high levels.
Absolutely. And do you find that you end up building a bunch of custom tooling to manage the organization, or do you find that off-the-shelf things can just be used in specific ways?
I don't think you necessarily need new tools to be able to do that, since this is something, of course, tons of other people have the same issue with, is trying to organize their teams to be effective. So we just try to use the same sort of tools. So we've got like our Slack, we've separate out into different channels. We try to get people into the different challenges and split them out that way. And then just make it very clear to anyone who wants to work on a challenge what's available. So you're able to use those tools, which are created for just normal productivity, to help your CTF team be more productive as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you find that the players in RPI-Sec and maybe in other teams, just anecdotally, tend to focus on one or only two specific areas for specialization? Or do you find that you've got a lot of folks that are just really good at a lot of different things?
So generally, you end up with people who are specializing in a certain category, just because that is the thing that they spend the most time on. It's the thing that they're most familiar with. And so if given a challenge, they're probably going to have less hurdles that they have to get over to be able to solve it. Of course, if you want to be competitive against other high-level teams, you have to be able to have the flexibility to solve any sort of challenge that comes your way. The more people you have, the better in terms of, having people who might be able to solve it, but it still creates a situation where you have some diminishing returns as you get further out. So being able to have some people who can just jump on anything and try to get their perspective is also very important, beyond just having people who are just super specialized in a certain topic. Because then you're going to get that curveball that comes at you and no one's going to know how to deal with it, but you've still got to try to attempt it.
For sure. Yeah. In my last job, our team, the red team that I was on, folks had different skill sets. And so there was a lot of overlap where, we were all good at a number of things. But it was amazing when, one or two people would be on an operation and then they would hit some kind of thing and they'd get stuck. And then one of us would, somebody else would be able to jump in and say, oh yeah, like go check out this thing or try this other thing. And so having, the complementary skills there is super helpful. But I'm totally with you as well with folks specializing, because there's just, a certain point for me where I get to a level in a particular category, and then I've capped my knowledge. Like I don't know enough to solve like the next difficulty of challenge. So like in Pwn, like maybe 300, and then if you give me a 400 challenge, like good luck. I probably will not solve it.
Yeah, and that's what I was kind of saying about knowing your limits too, in terms of trying to figure out what you should actually target to be most effective.
Ooh, this is interesting. So we're watching Ricardo right now, and it looks like they pulled down a file named A off of a directory listing, and it's a Windows binary. Interesting.
Yeah, I also saw someone looking at an XAMPP server. I'm not sure if that was their own or part of the challenge, but there's a lot of greens here to this being a Windows box running Windows web server, potentially just using XAMPP as the web server to host PHP. And maybe, as we saw, there was the CGI bin stuff. So potentially they are actually running this binary, which they just managed to pull down. So then maybe the next step is going to be looking at that binary in Ghidra or Binary Ninja or something like that to see if there's maybe some attack surface there that you can reach from the web server.
Yeah, awesome. Very, very, very cool. Actually the challenge creator, I believe, is here with us right now, Carlos Krosek in the chat. So what up, Kadu? Kadu sometimes gets a little wild with the challenges, so he might be like kind of laughing and cackling at the players that are struggling right now.
I'm watching him on the Brazilian live chat on the Brazilian live stream, and he cannot stop laughing. The other two hosts are very serious, and he's just like sipping his drink and having a lot of fun.
Watching someone solve your challenge is so much fun because you get to see them potentially maybe struggling, and okay, that can be funny, but whatever. But then once you see them actually hitting the parts of the thing, part of the path towards your exploit here, it's just so much fun to see them starting to craft their way through.
Absolutely. I used to make the CTF for ShakaCon, and what we would do is we'd set up in like a conference room, and then players could play, at anywhere in the conference. But then folks would come in and talk to us about, what they were seeing with the challenge. And so you'd get like, I'm stuck on this. I don't know what to do, or like, why is this thing happening? And you don't necessarily have to give them a hint, but you might be able to ask questions to get them to start thinking about the right path or whatever. And then when they come back and they're like, "Oh, I solved it," or you see them like solve on the scoreboard, it's always kind of a cool little feeling.
Sorry, everyone. I've been having a struggle here with my mic. Is this volume okay now?
Yeah, I think you're okay.
Right.
Amy, how does it sound to you?
Yeah, it sounds fine.
Dope.
So we can see trying to open up this binary in Ghidra here.
Yeah. And so, Amy, you mentioned Binary Ninja as your first disassembler that you listed off. Is that your go-to?
So it depends on what I'm trying to do. Of course, I've mostly trained on IDA over the many years, but if you are dealing with a small binary, or you feel like you're going to need to do a lot of programmatic approaches, like maybe some static analysis, something like that, then Binary Ninja is a really good tool for that, just because of the API that it exposes and how quickly you can create scripts to do analysis. But if I have to dig deep into a binary and spend hours reverse engineering, I'm probably going to use IDA, just because that's the thing that I have had the most experience in. But of course, IDA is very prohibitive to people just due to the price tag. So Binary Ninja can be a little bit more affordable. Of course, there's always Ghidra, which is free and open source. But if you can't afford Binary Ninja, I'd recommend it. They now also have a decompiler mode, which is their high-level IL. So you can get the same sort of decompilation that you could from Ghidra in that tool as well, which is a pretty important thing they did recently.
Yeah, I started reversing before IDA had the decompiler. And so I got more comfortable just looking at the assembly code, and I don't reverse nearly as much as I used to. So it's pretty infrequent, but when I throw something in to either IDA or Ghidra, I still end up like digging through the assembly for a while before I remember like, oh right, there's a decompiler. I can go look at this as like C code.
Yeah, and decompiler saves a lot of time, but you still should be able to understand the assembly that's going on underneath, because the decompiler can be wrong. It can be unclear about things, and if you really need to know what's going on, it's very important that you can also read the assembly code and understand how that's going. So if you're new to reverse engineering, I'd recommend not only using the decompiler, because that's what a lot of people do. They get IDA or they get Ghidra, and they're just always looking at the decompiled output. I'd recommend spending a good amount of time also trying to understand the assembly as well when it comes to trying to learn reverse engineering.
Just so y'all know, we are officially now on mid-game. We have already had our first hour of the game. And if you haven't betted yet, I think you should run, because I'm not sure if the betting is still open. So you might want to enjoy the last minutes of it.
Oz Hermit asked, I wonder if Dual Core's favorite tool has Taylor Swift quotes in it. It might. I don't know. My favorite tool is LS. I'm kidding. I don't know what tools have Taylor Swift quotes in them. I'm not aware of any.
Well, I know at least, I don't remember if it was Rust or Go, but one of those languages at one point was including a bunch of, I think it's like Lovecraft quotes or something in every binary. So you could do the same thing just with Taylor Swift quotes. every time you compile a tool, it just inserts Taylor Swift strings in there.
Nice. I know Metasploit has like a splash screen as well, and so maybe one of those like MOTD messages or something has Taylor Swift quotes in it. But I'm down with tools that have quotes from Tay-Tay. I'm good with that. Let's see. So we are currently looking at Bert, and Bert, our only player from America in this one. And it looks like they are doing a setup of XAMPP with Bitnami.
Yeah, it looks like they're trying to see if there's any interesting files on this server here, which is potentially how that binary was found before.
Nice.
I didn't catch when they downloaded the binary, which is open in Ghidra, but yes, I'm not sure where exactly that came from on the service.
Yeah, and I think here, I have no idea that A file that I think it was Ricardo found. I have no idea where they found that, and that's kind of one of the challenges that we face on UHC is we're jumping around looking at different players' screens, and so we'll just jump into the middle of some situation, and we have no idea how the player got there. But the good news is at the end of UHC, we'll have a debrief with the winner, or maybe even the three winners in this one, and the challenge author as well, who will then go through what the challenge setup was, as well as how all of the solves happened. So definitely stick with us because questions will be answered. And I just saw files named Cake PHP, and Cake PHP was like the PHP version of like Ruby on Rails, if I remember. It's a name that I haven't seen for a long time now.
Yeah, it kind of rings a bell, but I don't remember where I heard that before.
It was like it was a framework that I think it got rid of a lot of bug classes by default if you use the framework correctly, and it could like it would like build out scaffolding for your application based on configuration. So you'd like do this initial configuration setup, and then you would you kind of give it like a model of what your app was like, and then it would kind of build out the main foundation for the application for you, which is pretty cool. And that was about the time that I stopped doing web application stuff. So it was kind of like where my web knowledge ends at. I see they're looking at the SSL versions. And I guess when I think of like SSL stuff, you see this a build of OpenSSL, I would think of something like, Heartbleed or Poodle or something where you might be able to get like some memory contents, perhaps.
Yeah, because other SSL attacks usually involve a man in the middle position, which isn't quite what we have going on here.
Yeah.
So I personally probably wouldn't look into that too much, just unless there was on my mind a specific attack, which I knew it might be vulnerable to.
I really hope somebody tried the user agent thing at least for the PHP backdoor.
Yeah, and if nobody does, and that's the solution, everyone's going to kick themselves.
Yeah. And then they're going to look at us like, are you wizards? How did you know that? Because we don't know anything about the challenges here. So folks watching along with us, we are in the same boat as you. We're just kind of speculating as to like what the players might be thinking, based on what they're seeing and what we might try as CTF players ourselves. But we honestly don't have the answers or the solutions.
Yeah, I've been keeping an eye on Ricardo because they're still pulling through the binary. We don't necessarily know if this binary is actually going to be of interest in terms of the CTF, but I'm not sure if they've tried to look through strings to get an idea of what the binary is doing, because that's probably the first thing that I would try to do is just figure out what the binary actually is.
Absolutely. Yep. Starting with strings can get you a really quick win. And then at least for Elf, my next go-to as far as like easy mode is to do like L trace and then S trace. And sometimes those can get you some interesting details as well.
Oh yeah, for sure. But the thing that I would try to do here is figure out if this binary actually matters before I put a whole lot of time into it, because it could just potentially be some random binary on the server which has no flag in it. And you definitely don't want to end up spending all your time looking into that when the actual issue ended up being something else. So
absolutely,
if you can eliminate that, is a good first step.
Yeah, the triage there can be super helpful in saving time. And I see Oz Hermit mentioning that maybe the app that they had in mind with the Taylor Swift quotes was an app with with an anagram of Metasploit. So perhaps they are alluding to Moist Pedal, which was an open source malware implant framework, or maybe one of its previous versions, which was also an anagram of Metasploit. And then right after that, we see RH79123 in the chat. My favorite tool is Sub7. And Sub7 was like my first backdoor that I ever got to play with. Super fun. I remember owning a bunch of boxes with it back in the AOL days when I was a lot younger. Let's see. We are looking at Ricardo currently. I'm going to pop down to their screen.
Yeah, I'm taking a look through to see if there's anyone else who seems to have made more progress.
Nice. It looks like Ricardo is still poking around at that A binary. And like you said, Amy, we haven't seen them run strings or do anything else for kind of quick triage there. It looks like they were looking through the imports, and imports can be like a good way to maybe find some interesting code. And I used to have like a list of imports. Like if I wanted to know what like file stuff was happening, right, I'd be like, okay, cool. Like where does it call create file A or create file W, and similar things. So that could be one way that you can kind of quickly do some poking, but definitely not nearly as fast as just doing strings. And it would be a huge bummer if Ricardo or any of the players spent a bunch of time digging in like the Ghidra decompile, and the only thing to get out of the binary was like a flag that you would have gotten by just running strings. Yeah,
for sure. There's definitely here we go. Now we're pulling up some strings. Hopefully we'll see if there's anything interesting in here, give an idea about what this binary is supposed to do.
Yep.
So he's looking for a UHC just to see if this is like a custom binary, but no matches.
Yeah, and the flags tend to have a prefix of UHC and then left curly brace. Although I have seen in some places where they'll have like U space H space C. So maybe it's in like Unicode format or something like that. And if you're not searching for the Unicode strings, you might miss it. That authentication credentials, that looks like an interesting string. And there's authorization basic there.
Yeah, it's looking like this is some sort of web server. Like, I'm not totally sure if this is maybe some part of XAMPP itself, or if this is like making requests. But we do see a lot of HTTP protocol strings here.
Yeah, good point. We saw the socket stuff there as well. So it looks like it's at least some kind of network application that can talk HTTP and potentially talk proxy stuff based on the strings at least. Yeah, put and post are familiar HTTP methods. But yeah, we still don't really know what the system is. At least in this case, Ricardo has done strings and did look for the UHC flag, so that's good. But very, like you said, Amy, it very well could be just some component of XAMPP, in which case we probably have no need to reverse it.
Yeah, something that I would look for at this point is the help strings, because if it's a binary that has different options, very often there might be a description of what the binary does in the help string. And I think I actually saw that on the screen at one point, but it was like cut off, so I didn't actually catch what the binary was. So it's possible that they've already looked at that.
Yeah, great point there. I can't tell you how many times I've just had a random binary and I'll like spin up a VM and then just start running it in the VM, like right on the command line to see what it dumps out when I run it without any arguments, or when I run it with like --help or /? or whatever. So those help strings can definitely give you some good info to at least get you a better idea of what you're working with. I'm just going to check really quickly. I know that there's this like first blood thing when the first player gets their first flag.
Yeah, the scoreboard is still very quiet.
Okay, yeah, and so we haven't had that happen yet, and so it seems like no flags yet.
But if y'all want to check the scoreboard, here's the link there in the chat. So feel free to take a look at it. There's no solves yet, so.
We do see a second player, Wade, here, who also now has the a.exe.
Nice.
Which they found from the XAMPP server. So it does seem like that could potentially be the next step in this, especially now that two people have found it.
In the chat, GoPro Slow Yo says it was Apache Bench, a standard benchmarking tool, so that could be a rabbit hole. Good to know. And one way that I kind of check, another way that I check for quick tools is if I see a unique string, maybe even in like the help strings, just searching that online can get you a match, and it can tell you like, oh yeah, this is what this application is. And then I might say like, okay, cool, it's something that I care about or don't care about.
Yeah, Google is really useful for finding random pieces of source code or binaries which might be compiled into whatever application you're looking at. It is a little bit sketchy to me that the binary is just called A in its own directory. Like, it seems like that could be a hint towards maybe this is something to look at. If it had just been named, some other application and it was in some random location, then maybe it could be more of a rabbit hole. But that's, some metagaming, and it's not totally sure if that's intentional that it was just labeled as A here.
Yeah, great point. And it is kind of funny to me when I end up playing CTFs. Sometimes I see stuff on the box and I can't tell whether it was intentional by the challenge author or was something that they accidentally left behind from their initial testing and setup.
Yeah, I always try to make a sweep on any challenges that I've created to make sure I haven't left anything behind, like comments that may be misleading, because people do try to metagame the challenges and they'll look for things that kind of look out of place and assume that those are hints. And sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes it's just a mistake or an accident. But it's not fun to then get sucked down a rabbit hole because of that. For sure.
Also, another player with an amazing name in the audience, Shaquille Oatmeal. I love it. But Oreo with a really good point of like trying to search the checksum of the file on VirusTotal. And so if it's been uploaded already, you might get some details about that. VirusTotal can also give you additional details like the rich header or more of a, I guess, a straightforward breakdown as opposed to having to poke around in Ghidra. So I like that idea as well, searching the checksum of the file. Let's see. So we are watching Wade, and Wade, again, by the way, for folks joining us, is I think a 4-time winner of UHC. So this is not their first rodeo, but all the players have different skill sets. So sometimes you end up with players that are getting exposure to something completely brand new to them live on the internet, and I really appreciate that. That is kind of showing, like, how do I go about learning something that I have no experience with previously. And so that's very well what could be happening here. Oh yeah, and there's so this Wade's kind of on this look at Apache Bench and noticing that the default name for the file is AB. So maybe it just got renamed to A. And Amy, to your point, like definitely a valid question of like why did it get renamed to A? Why is it not still AB?
Yeah, why is there this directory that has this binary here? That's sort of what is probably going to be going through your mind after you found this.
Definitely.
It does look like a couple of other players have also encountered this binary now, so it seems to be the focus of what players are looking at.
Nice. And now that they've kind of identified this is what this program might be, that means they could probably find a version string in their copy in the or just the A file, I guess. And then they could pull down the same version for ab.exe and do checksums of both of those files and see whether they match up.
Yeah, that's definitely a good way to determine if you have like a backdoored version of a binary. I've seen CTFs do that several times. One tip actually is you can use dpackage if it's like an installed package to check if the binary is still the same as when it was installed.
Ooh.
But in this case, of course, since we're not actually on the system, we don't necessarily have that information, but you could still check it against like the default binary or like the release builds as you were mentioning.
Yeah, absolutely. And great point. I did not know that about dpackage. So something new that I learned. Thank you.
I didn't there at the time, and it was only after the CTF was over that the author was like, oh yeah, you could just use dpackage to realize that there was a backdoored binary. Like it was like a backdoored Apache or something like that. So, maybe something to look into as well. We talked about backdoors for PHP, but you could have other backdoors as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I do see, it looks like Wade, or no, who are we watching now? Sorry. Bigos also digging into this Apache benchmark application. And so, yeah, maybe we'll find out whether it is the same release build or maybe there's something different. With it being open source, seems like it would be much easier to Trojan or change or patch it as opposed to something that doesn't have source code available.
Yeah, and also if we're modeling like a realistic situation where a backdoor has been installed in a network, they might try to target unassuming binaries like a benchmarking program. That might be like less likely to be detected.
Yeah, definitely a favorite of mine is to change something that looks very benign and innocuous, and it's just like, testing and diagnostics tools are great for that. Excellent targets. And I'm trying to see what Bigos is looking through here. I guess it's just output.
This is the strings, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Essentially just not, skipping the step of loading it into the decompiler and just directly sorting through the strings with a string command. That can be a bit dangerous though, because sometimes that will skip the Unicode strings like you had mentioned before. So there's different flags you can pass the strings to make sure you get all of the strings and not just the ASCII C ones.
Do you know, is there a different utility that will dump multiple encodings of strings by default?
I don't know by default. I mean, of course, you could set an alias for your strings. I know there's some Windows applications that support it, since Windows is very often like UTF-16 strings, your wide characters. Mm-hmm. So some of those support it by default. But yeah, I'm not totally sure off the top of my head.
Yeah, I feel like there was one that I had used in the past, maybe from the Radare suite of tools, which is like also like another disassembler, but I just don't see people using it particularly often. But I feel like there was some one of those binaries in that suite of tools would do strings of like all different encodings for you in one shot. And I've done the same that you mentioned with having like an alias or a bash function or like a shell function. And so just running strings or some alias will do, all the available encodings.
Mm-hmm. So looking at the searches here, it looks like there's potentially some the Apache benchmark utility has been linked to some previous exploits or potentially backdoors. I didn't totally see, so maybe that's something to look at if this has been used before.
Very cool. And I did see the one thing that I would be curious to search there is that PDB path that was at the very bottom of the strings.
Yeah, and that's also a good way to potentially find other similar binaries if they have similar PDB paths because they were created on the same system or by the same CI pipeline.
Yeah, I always thought that was really fascinating once like threat hunting started to really take hold and people were fingerprinting like adversaries and groups and the toolkits and PDB paths were part of that and figuring out like, oh, this set of tools is built by the same actors that built this other set of tools, which I always thought was kind of neat.
Yeah, there's a good amount of metadata which ends up in binaries when you compile them. So knowing about that can be very useful, especially if you're dealing with some sort of analysis or attribution or something like that.
Yeah, and also I always am fascinated by folks who just have that depth of knowledge about how applications are compiled and then linked, that they can speak, in depth about it to say like, oh yeah, like here, like this code and this code are, built by the exact same tool chain or something like that. And the reason is because this is how it does the thing. And so like, GCC 8 versus GCC 9 would have a different resulting output. And I always thought that was like impressive. It's definitely not a level that I've ever been at, but it seems really cool.
Yeah. And I mean, there's definitely, depending on how the compiler works, especially when compilers can produce like reproducible builds, you could potentially find exactly the settings that were used to build a binary. Not that that's going to be easy, but you could potentially do that by analyzing the different ways that the binaries are produced.
Someone I know is part of their red team operation that they ran. They wanted to emulate a particular threat actor. So they took malware from that threat actor and they reversed it all the way through and essentially rewrote it from scratch. But then they also had to figure out what the tool chain was for building it so that they could get, the same type of build from it. And so I was way impressed by that. I thought that was a really cool technique because you see all this stuff about adversary emulation and adversary simulation, but I don't know anybody that's done it to that level before.
Yeah, it actually reminds me, not exactly security related, but with the people who were reverse engineering like Super Mario 64, yes, and then able to recompile it to produce the exact same binary again. Like the fact that they've gotten it to that state is pretty crazy and something you could potentially apply to other things.
Yeah, very cool. And just amazing knowledge there. I always kind of think of game hacking as like the pinnacle of like a lot of different domains kind of converging, right? So you've got to be able to reverse engineer. You've got to be able to write code. So you've got to be like really good at software development. And then in a lot of cases, there's probably some binary exploitation happening as well. So, you're writing your cheat, you've reversed the game or the library, whatever your target is. And then you've found some way to exploit that. And that's like 3 different domains that you've got to be really, really good at it to do it really well at a high level. And so I always think of game hacking as kind of like the pinnacle there.
Yeah, it's definitely cool. They've kind of independently recreated a lot of the same things that we use in security, without that formal training as their background. They're just working on trying to do cool things with the games. And when you really think about it, that's what we're doing, except our things aren't games. They're just normal computer programs.
Yep. And I can't tell you, like, I've lost kind of how many people that's their background story of how they got into security or into hacking was because they played some game and they wanted to cheat at it or get, a better score or get items or whatever. And so I really like that link there.
Yeah, I think it's cool because it's helping make security maybe a bit more accessible by giving something very tangible to people, something they're familiar with. It's not just like jumping into this entirely new world.
Yeah. And I think this is kind of the same thing that UHC offers in a different way, right? Is we are showing how people hack, and a lot of how people hack is failing and looking at things and not knowing what's going on and trying different things. And for folks that are interested in hacking but don't know where to start and they're worried about being overwhelmed, like, yeah, it's definitely a possibility, but it's so fun, and you get to just try things and learn as you go along. And so it's kind of neat, like showing the rest of the world, like, this is what it looks like. It's not necessarily like the movies where you sit down and guess passwords within 60 seconds or something. It's a bunch of like searching and poking at things and figuring out what happens.
Yeah, and for sure, you definitely want to, come in expecting to run into issues, expecting to not find what you're looking for immediately, and just be able to go on from there and then try to figure out what you want to do next, and just continue pushing forward, which is kind of what we're seeing. So a few people, it seems like they are maybe looking back at some of the other targets they had. Maybe the binary isn't as fruitful as it may have seemed at first.
Right. Yeah. I see. We're looking at My Donut currently, and excuse me, My Donut's got Impacket stuff up, and so I'm a big fan of Impacket's set of tools for Windows. Windows stuff is I've learned all by playing Hack the Box, and so I've gotten exposure to Impacket, the Impacket tools through playing Hack the Box, but yeah, just trying different things and seeing what's going on. Also, LOL Delta Web saying Rubber Ducky would get that password in 15 seconds. So yeah, I guess the thing in the movies is like, why don't the hackers just walk around with a rubber ducky on them all the time?
We were having a little bit of trouble there with my donut screen. It was not loading correctly. We're gonna be back in just a few minutes. But just so y'all know, including the players that don't speak Portuguese and are not watching the Brazilian live stream, they're just talking about the Cyber Apocalypse event from Hack the Box, which is a 5-day event for all difficulty levels and a lot of content and exclusive prizes. And you can sign up for free in the link in the chat. And reminding everyone, tonight we're gonna have prizes for the 3 top players of tonight's match here on UHC. They're all gifts from Hack the Box itself. And yeah, when is that? I don't remember. But if you click the link, you're gonna have all the info you need. So here is the important info. We're gonna, I've just listened to Kadu saying that he's gonna release a hint for all of the players. So, English speaker players that are listening here, y'all gonna have a hint pretty soon. So stay tuned there on your Discord channel, because the hint is coming.
Yeah, and that will happen sometimes if you're hosting a challenge. Sometimes, the path that you planned out can be not as obvious to other people as it is to you, since of course you created it. And sometimes you just need to nudge people a little bit in the right direction, especially when there's a limited time.
Yeah. As a CTF author in the past, once it gets to be a certain point and there are like no solves on a challenge, I get really worried. Like, is something broken? Did I do something wrong? And like, turns out everybody has been doing the right thing, but there was something that I messed up.
Yeah, and that's always the scariest thing. You're worried if your config is broken. You run your solve script a few times just to verify. But I guess it's better than having everyone instantly solve it, which means that it was probably broken. Yeah.
I had a regression once where I built a challenge. I wrote a client. It was like a service. I used to do these like dev CTF challenges as well. So basically it was like you'd solve some problem. It wasn't like a super hard problem to solve, but you'd have to solve it repeatedly with a random problem set. And so you wouldn't be able to just like manually work your way through the problem. It would be like, what's the like 15th number in the Fibonacci sequence or series or whatever, right? And then you'd have to send that back within a second. And then it would say like, okay, what's the 45th number in the series? And then you'd have to send that one back. So you had to like write code to be able to solve the CTF challenge. And then once you did that like 100 times or something like that, then you would get the flag. And there was some service that I wrote, and I wrote a client for it, and it solved and everything was good. But I had some regression somewhere with making a minor update and ended up breaking the service. And when we did the CTF live, I didn't realize that was the case until we got to a point where there was like no solves. And I was like, oh no, why are there no solves? It was because I broke it.
Yeah, it's definitely, I like to encourage people to talk to me when they're solving my challenges, just so I can kind of get an idea of if they're going the right direction.
And that's a good point too, of having that communication with the challenge author, because like you said, like we'll do a sweep. We'll try to make sure we didn't leave anything laying around that might, mislead the players. But like, we don't know what the interpretation of a challenge is going to be like for every single player. And so it's quite possible that something that you didn't even think about, or maybe meant in a different way, gets perceived completely different by players. And they're like, oh, in reading this or in seeing this thing, it's making me think I need to go down this path. And that's totally the wrong path to follow. So when you've got that loop there, that tight feedback loop, you can sort of save time for the players. Oh, here we go. Okay, here's the hint. In Microsoft Networks, a user can be used for unauthenticated users in Active Directory to access resources within the network, such as file sharing, web services, etc. Use this network user to access resources within the network.
So it sounds like that LDAP stuff that people were looking at before might be more important now.
Yeah, and I honestly, I'm not familiar with this, so I'm not sure if there's like some default Active Directory account that gets set up that can maybe be used.
I'm not extremely familiar with Active Directory. Most of the stuff I do is on like Linux or Android, but I do know that there can be like an anonymous user sometimes, but I'm not sure if that is the case here.
Yeah, great point. And same, I'm also less familiar in Active Directory. Oreo, yes, they did find that port 389 was open, so LDAP is there. We did see people running linenum or linenum. So I don't know if there was maybe another IP address that had SNB open, because at the beginning, the challenge text is literally just like a CIDR. I think it was like 10.10.8.0/24, if I remember right. And so we saw some people find port 389 was open. But then we see people finding like XAMPP instances with PHP info. So those are definitely other service or other hosts that turned up later.
Yeah, it does look like there's at least a few things going on within the CEDAR. Whether some of that is like red herrings or if it's all going to play into maybe later challenges or something like that, I'm not totally sure. But
yeah,
at least with the hint, it seems to be pointing back at that Active Directory LDAP stuff that we saw people looking at early. So people probably put their attention back towards that.
Yeah, and that would make sense too, right? Because we also saw port 53 open. And so Active Directory can also do DNS as well. And so I think that kind of ties together there. We didn't see Oreos asking, is port 88 open? And I don't think that we've seen port 88. But then I would be thinking, Kerberos there. Oh yeah, and here's some Nmap results. So there's a lot more stuff open on whichever host this was that they found. So I missed it whether 88 was open, but it looks like it's a Windows 2012 maybe based on the SMB banner there. Oh, and
yeah.
Nmap. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say at the bottom there, the service info Nmap thinks it's maybe 2008 release 2 or up to 2012. And then, I guess it found the SMB script there found the guest, or I guess it used guest in trying to do its enumeration.
Yeah, now that there's a bit more focus on this one component, I think people are going to start finding more information about it that they may have skipped over originally because they weren't sure if they should spend the time trying to index the Active Directory services.
Yeah. And I don't know. It's interesting that the initial findings from RustScan were only showing 53 and 389, the DNS and LDAP services. But then this Nmap result that we just looked through had way more services listed. So I'm curious if it's just a different host, or maybe something happened where like the host cycled or rebooted during the event, and then more services became available, or maybe a firewall setting got changed. I'm not sure.
Yeah, there could also be some sort of port knocking thing going on, but I'm not sure in this configuration if that makes a lot of sense.
Right. Yeah. Usually when I find port knocking, there's some other clue around, like to provide context to get the player to be like, oh yeah, here's like what I need to do for port knocking.
Yeah, it is also possible that there was just like some sort of latency or something which made the scanners produce a false negative on those ports. So sometimes running things multiple times will get you more information when you're dealing with network situations.
Absolutely. And just to kind of circle back, Marina mentioned the Hack the Box cyber apocalypse thing, and we posted in the chat there with the dates, but just calling it out for the audience. Monday, April 19th through Friday the 23rd is when that's running on Hack the Box. And I'm curious to see about this event. I know they've got other things in Hack the Box aside from the normal machines in their labs. They've got like battlegrounds and some different training paths, which are really cool. So curious to see what they've cooked up with this cyber apocalypse event.
We see a few people trying to break out SMB clients and authenticate using that guest user.
Yeah, and Bert, that we're currently watching, it looked like they were trying with the anonymous user that you had mentioned as well. And searching anonymous comes back with anonymous hacker group Wikipedia page.
Yeah, because I know at least in some cases, in terms of Windows shares, you can have anonymous access where it's either anonymous no password or like anonymous. But again, maybe in this situation, there's another guest account, like we saw that thing pop up earlier, which said guest. So potentially that's also a similar situation.
Yeah, I do recall seeing guest by default as a user on, or as an account on all Windows systems. So that might be one to check. I've got some CTF tooling that I built that's basically just shell script, calling other tools, but it does a good amount of SMB and RPC enumeration for me. And so that's like one of the things that I'll kick off in the background, or like my CTF recon script will do a check to see, like, do I find services that this works with? And then if it does find like SMB is open or whatever, it'll it'll call those.
It seems like we hit the point of the CTF where people are banging their heads on stuff.
Poor players, they're never going to come back after this one. I don't think I've used enum for Linux. I think I always, or maybe that is the one I use instead of linenum. I know, Amy, you said you don't tend to do Windows stuff as much. Do you have a particular SMB like Samba and RPC enumeration tool?
Not really. I mean, I've not really gone and done a whole lot with SMB stuff. Like, my focus is usually mostly on web applications and less on the actual network infrastructure behind them. So unfortunately, I'm not super versed in SMB exploration.
Yeah, no worries. I know one application that I found that looks pretty cool is SMB map. And you can give it a number of flags and it can try to enumerate and dump out shares for you, which is really helpful. So I always like to try, when I find shares that are available, I like to try to loot all of the contents and copy those locally to my system so that I can dig through them with my own tooling.
Yeah, before someone notices and unshares.
Yes, exactly. And yeah, Oreo as well mentioned CrackMap exec. So CME, super helpful there to help with dumping things out and using Samba. We're popping over to, oh, wow. Okay, so we're popping over to Celesian, and it looks like maybe Celesian has a shell. That looked, yeah, there you go. So Celesian with the shell now on.
Looks like that's right on the XAMPP server.
Yeah, awesome. And then using the IWR PowerScript shorthand, but I don't know if they're, or PowerShell rather, I don't know if they're running PowerShell as their shell. It looks like it's just a regular shell.
It looks like they got to connect back here because you have your Netcat listener and then got a shell connect back to them. Unfortunately, I guess we missed triggering that, but that's what it looks like.
Yeah. Now they're copying RG up to the box. So RG being rip grep, which will grep through things super fast for you. Rip grep was one that I learned about through UHC. In the past, I'd always done grep, and then I think there's like Silver Search was another one that I'd kind of used. But rip grep is one that I use now as part of CTF tooling because it is just really fast.
Yeah, another one, Sift, which I think is focused more on like source code rather than looking through binaries and stuff. But I found that can be very useful as well.
Oh, nice. Thank you for the recommendation. I'm adding that to my list. I have I have like a text file of like all the things I learned on UHC, and so week after week that file just grows, and so now I've added Sift to it. Thank you. SIFT, you said?
Yeah, I believe so.
Dope.
Just so y'all know, apparently Bert and Celesian are running for the first flag, so I would kindly ask for one of you to stay on Bert and one of you to stay on Celesian. So.
Sure, I'll stay on Celesian and let you know if anything cool happens.
Thank you.
And on Celesian's side, Celesian just ran ripgrep looking for UHC across one of the directories. So that metagaming of going after the flags right away.
Yeah, it looks like currently Bert's trying to get a PHP shell working.
Nice. Yeah, and that's I was curious about that. How we found the XAMPP, we saw that it runs PHP that we knew through the PHP info. There was a directory with that weird binary of A. So one of the questions there is like, how did that file get there? And then can I also add my own files into that directory? And so if so, like how? Like could I do it with like a put maybe? But then you could get a web shell that way, and that would be maybe a good first access onto the box.
Yeah, and then that would get you in, and then from there it'll be much easier to run your commands. But something to be aware of, at least when you're on shared infrastructures, other people can also access your PHP shells. So often if that's the situation, you want to use something like a password or maybe some sort of encryption or something on your shell or your payload, just so that the other people you're playing with can't as easily use your exploit.
Yeah, absolutely. And just like you mentioned, Amy, Zopio in the chat calling out the same thing there. A friend of mine, he used to have a build of C99, which was a web shell back in the day, but it was in Arabic, and he just knew C99 like in and out. So he didn't speak or read or write Arabic, but he would throw that onto systems when he was playing CTF. And so people would find his C99 shell, but then they would have no idea what like how to use it because none of the language was in their language. So security by obscurity in that case.
Yeah, another example of that is in attack defense competitions, where very often you'll actually get access to the network traffic of your services. And so if another team is throwing an exploit against your service, you're often going to then be able to inspect those packets and maybe pull out that exploit and use it yourself. So if you're in that kind of competition, you want to make sure that your payload and your exploit are as obfuscated as possible to prevent other teams from profiting off of your hard work.
Yes.
Stealing your exploits.
Yeah, wasn't there like a FreeBSD ODE that got burned at DEF CON CTF one year that way?
Yeah, there definitely was. I think it was actually like one of the really original RPISec alumni was involved in that. And I don't condone bringing 0 days to own the infrastructure, but it is pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely one of the more memorable CTF experiences, given that I could recall it even to this day.
Yeah, but even just in the context of the challenges, I know in attack defenses, I've written a script that just looks for a bunch of A's being sent over the network and pulls that packet out. And I was actually able to steal a couple of PPP's exploits that way. If you don't know, PPP is one of the very big teams that's always does really, really well. So just something to be aware of if you're ever in a like attack defense, or even in a situation where you're on a shared infrastructure.
Yeah, awesome. Great call outs there. And you're right. Yes, PPP, the Plaid Parliament opposing the team from Carnegie Mellon. And yeah, the shared infrastructure stuff. I'm always curious about how the tooling has evolved to be able to extract payloads. Because I'm asserting that you're just like running full PCAP, and then you've got like something that's, watching those packets. And so obviously, like, there's, magic bytes, for example, right? So you'd be able to see like, oh, like this is an ELF that's coming across, or a gzip archive or whatever. But then like, there's somebody got a flag. Celesian just got a flag. We're going to get a first blood here. Brace yourself. It's going to be loud.
First blood.
Oh, there we go. About an hour 45 minutes in, we got our first flag. Looks like.
Yeah, nice. So yeah, Celesian found it through the remote shell, and they're poking around in the local administrator. Oh wow, Celesian is system on the box. Okay, wow, I didn't even realize. Didn't know. Didn't see the Privesk there. Amazing.
Yeah, look at that. That's pretty cool. I'm not quite sure if it's in scope to mess around with the box too much. I'm not sure how that works here.
Yeah, so the players aren't supposed to inhibit the other players, essentially.
Yeah, makes sense. Just kind of like, good sportsmanship not to take down the box after you've popped it.
Yeah. But unlike Try Hack Me, for example, they've got their like Hacker of the Hill or King of the Hill rooms. And in that situation, what you can do is basically kick everybody else off the system, right? That is the goal, is to get in there and then boot everyone else off and keep them off and patch things.
Yeah, and that's often the case in attack defense CTF as well, where you'll want to try to like establish some sort of backdoor or persistence in the other team services so that you can continue to take their flags even if they patch the initial exploit you used.
Awesome. And so I kind of wanted to go back. We see here that Celesian has got Mimikatz up. Given that system vantage point, they should be able to dump out a bunch of secrets from the host. So maybe there's another flag running in memory, or some other credentials that can then be used to pivot elsewhere inside of the environment potentially. WinDAP search, another favorite of mine. I actually use the version that's written in Golang as opposed to the Python one, but great tool for enumeration, especially against when you found LDAP exposed.
Yeah. So I am curious if the next challenge is in the same seeder, or if they're going to be having a different target. Because if it is in the same seeder, then of course, coming at it from this, system perspective, it's going to be a lot easier to potentially find other targets on that network with this access.
Yeah, we saw as Celesian just very briefly had a notes file up there that had, it looked like three different hosts on it. And so I'm, at least with the access on the Windows box, you should be able to do things like look at the existing network connections and look at the ART table. And that should give you info about what your neighbors are and who's around that can get you get access to be able to pivot. And so, Amy, I wanted to go back to the tooling thing about pulling out payloads and extracting payloads and reconstructing them. So what does that look like as far as in modern CTF teams?
So of course you have your, you're probably going to be ingesting packet captures. So there's a lot of, there's some like Python tools, for example, you can use to ingest the PCAP and then separate out all your different streams. And then from there, one thing you could potentially do is look at the response from the service and see if there's any ones that respond in a different way than most other connections. Since, if people are able to exploit it, usually you're going to hit different functionality. Potentially also, it has to send a flag back. In most of these competitions, they make it so you can't use a connect back because that would make it too easy to avoid being detected on the network. So you can often look for unexpected content coming back from the server, whether they just send the flag directly, which is usually pretty easy to just look for, or if it's like an encrypted blob or something like that. Then from there, once you've detected a potentially interesting stream, you can pull that out and potentially replay that. So we have scripts that will just turn a TCP stream into a Python script, which can then talk to the socket and replay those same interactions.
Ooh, that's awesome. And you mentioned Python tooling there. So are you using Scapy or a different module?
Scapy is, I think, the thing that we normally do. I wasn't too involved in writing this, but I'm pretty sure Scapy would be the go-to for this.
Yeah, awesome. I wrote, when I first moved here, I got my first ever like IoT devices, like a thermostat, and I have like a Sonos speaker. And I was terrified about having them on on the same network segment as all of my other devices. And so I took a Raspberry Pi, put a access point on it with like just a Wi-Fi adapter, and then I ran host AP, and then bridged that into the internet uplink. And then I would put one device on the access point, and I'd run like a full packet capture. And then I wrote some Python tooling that then went through the PCAP and looked at what are the IP addresses and the protocols that this device speaks through normal interaction. So I'd have, like the thermostat associated, and then I would use the thermostat, like schedule temperature changes, change the temperature currently, turn it off, turn it on, etc. And then from there, the Python tooling would then build out IP tables rules. And so that way I could filter out like, okay, anything else that like happens that aside from this stuff is like abnormal behavior, and then like alert me of it and reject it.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's sort of like building a network sandbox around a potentially vulnerable application.
Great learning experience, and then gave me a lot more peace of mind about how my network was built out.
Yeah, another thing that you can do sometimes is build a proxy in front of your target. You write a Python script that just like intercepts a connection, does any processing or logging, and then forwards the connection through. Of course, that can be tricky if you're dealing with something that has like TLS and you can't terminate it, or you have cert pinning. But yeah, very often that's also a good technique if you're able to put something in front of it and then limit what connections can actually go through.
Yeah, great points there. Okay, so it looks like here Celesian has done some enumeration of the Windows environment. I saw like a bunch of stuff come back from Windapp search. Looked like they found a different host name, but then when they went to ping that host name, it actually came back to the same IP address that they were poking at previously. So nothing amazing there, but now it looks like they're trying to RDP into the box, and I guess they've got a hash that they dumped.
That looks close. But then it said, what was that? I didn't see the entirety of that error message.
Yeah, I think it was that the access was locked. So maybe the user doesn't have, or the account doesn't have privileges for RDP.
Yeah.
But yeah, using the hash that was dumped out of Mimikatz, or as our friend Corey calls it, Corey++ calls it Mimigatos, which is now my new favorite phrasing for Mimikatz. So using Mimigatos to dump out the hashes, and that's something that I always, I don't think of immediately about Windows, is that in a lot of places you can use a hash. You don't necessarily need to have the clear text credential. And so sometimes I'll go down the wrong rabbit hole, or I'll like be poking at something unnecessarily when I could have just used the hash all along.
Oh yeah, for sure. Once you get yourself into a situation where you can kind of intercept those hashes and dump them, it really increases, your capabilities from that point, even if you don't have the actual user's credentials. And especially in like a CTF where you're not worried about persistent access, like you might in something like a pen test or red teaming excursion, you don't have to worry as too much about things like hashes expiring. Yeah,
great point. Yeah, it's always sad when a shell dies, and like I guess in a CTF as well. But on a red team op, I would always be sad when the shell would die. So here it looks like Celesian uploaded uploaded Chisel onto the box, but then I guess pulled it So downloaded it to the box, but then accidentally downloaded it as chisel semicolon.exe, and then that was causing trouble. But Chisel, one of my favorite tools for tunneling and being able to pivot, is written in Golang, so you can cross-compile it for different architectures and different operating systems. And so you can, it looks like in this case, Celesian is going to run it to expose a SOX proxy listener, and then connect back and have a SOX proxy available to start pivoting and hitting other things on the network.
Yeah, it seems like Go is becoming more of a go-to language when it comes to writing networking tools, just because of how easy it is to interact with the different networking facilities, and also creating different threads and Go routines and stuff like that. So it's kind of cool to see.
Yeah, I'm a big fan as well. I don't write as much Go as I would like to, but the stuff that I've built with it has been really nice, and I absolutely love that I can be playing a CTF or working on some system and be like, oh, I need a different build of this tool, and it's like, cool, 2 commands, 1 command, I'm done, good to go.
Yeah, in some of the CTFs, like there's one we'd play where you'd essentially get on this network and there'd be a ton of backdoored boxes that everyone owns, and there'd be like, hundreds of boxes to hit. So we had a Go tool which would make it very easy to hit all those boxes at the same time.
Excellent.
Get a good hold at the beginning of the CTF.
Yeah, I've seen some really impressive like level of concurrency with Golang. My friend HD, who most people will know through Metasploit, he has a new product called Rumble that he wrote, but it's like this amazing like network discovery stuff, but all written in Golang, and just this one little binary and off and running. So really impressive stuff that you can do with the language. And again, I love the portability. We're still watching Celesian. I think Celesian now is looks like they're end mapping through the Chisel tunnel, and we see on the right there that the Chisel tunnel was connected. And then, of course, we saw that in that middle tab in the front shell, Celesian running with the full TCP scan, -s, capital T. That's because through proxies, when you do a port scan, you'll need that full TCP connection. You're not able to do just the SYN scans with the half open where you start the handshake and then back off. So Celesian doing the things, and it looks like now pulling up EvilWinRM maybe. I love EvilWinRM. If you can find a user in the remote management group, or an account in the remote management group, EvilWinRM can get you a really nice full-featured shell. There it is right there. We just saw it pop as the user Stoke, or maybe Stock because it doesn't have the dots over the O. But we see the shell, and again, PowerShell, you get tab completion, really, really nice. And again, the nice aspect of Windows where you can pass a hash as opposed to necessarily needing the clear text credential.
Yeah, we'll see if we can get some of the other people here to get their reverse shells to land as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there you go. And you've got a couple interesting file names in the temp or file directory names in the temp directory. So it looks like maybe some other folks are getting some stuff up onto the box.
Yeah, I see people successfully uploading files, but trying to figure out how to actually turn that into a shell.
Nice. Yeah, I guess we didn't really see how Celesian got that initial shell to connect. So that will be something that we'll have to figure out, or maybe we'll catch another player, in the middle. But we'll definitely figure out at the debrief at the end for sure. Excuse me.
And there's at least a few people, I think, still trying to use that same PHP shell. I see at least one person trying to use the Celesian shell.
Nice. Yeah, sometimes the shells are generic enough where it's like you can just pass a command as like a query parameter and you're off and running. But other times they're more protected, and so like you said, there's some other barrier to entry to keep your access just for you.
Yeah, I usually try to at least include a password as like a query argument as well when you're making a simple shell like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a brilliant approach. I love that. Okay, and now pulling down Nabu, and this is one that I do not know. Are you familiar with this?
I have not. I don't think I've heard of that before.
Awesome. We're going to learn. All right, so it looks like they Celesian staged this, pulled down this binary, Nabu, whatever it is, and now is going to move it up into their latest shell as Stoke through their Evil WinRM. And so Evil WinRM actually has internal commands baked in, like download and upload for even easier file transfer as opposed to having to do like IWR in PowerShell.
So I looked it up, and Nabu is another port scanning tool written in Go.
Oh, nice.
It does fast syn connect scans.
Excellent.
So doing more scanning. And I see, let's see, Matthias here is, it looked like they got some commands working and trying to get an actual interactive shell.
Nice. Amor, do you want to pop over to Mateus and we'll see what's going on there?
Sure. Let's go. Oh, let me just bring us back to the screen. All right. Sorry, everyone. I keep very quiet because I have two languages going on in my head at the same time, plus the staff chat. So I have like 4 windows with different information going on right now. So sorry that I am quiet, but we are just discussing here the possibility of not having the top 3 players tonight, because we are now officially in the last game portion of tonight's match. So we have just 1 more hour for 2 other players to join in the scoreboard, and as we've seen, it's kind of hard. Kadu took the day off to make, the player's life a living hell.
Yeah, but it does look like at least a few people are getting closer on the first flag in terms of actually being able to run commands on the box here. Yeah,
you're right. Right now, what we're seeing on Mateus' screen is that they've got RCE through a file that it looks like they've uploaded. I'm saying that based on the unique file name that's there. So we still don't know how the file upload happened. It might be as easy as like an HTTP put, or maybe there's some other bug in the app that somebody found. But now it seems like they're probably just trying to get an interactive shell as opposed to just the SMB client. Okay, so SMB client, nice. Okay, Samba was what got you in to be able to have the file write primitive onto the remote host.
Yeah, it looks like that guest account was the account that was available for accessing this, and then uploading your files to the XAMPP server to then try to get their actual system running. Looks like now they're trying to upload an actual reverse shell to execute that, potentially get your connect back.
Yeah, my go-to in this situation here is Nisheng, which I learned from IPsec's videos, and it's in I think it's included in Kali by default. But really simple. You just need 1 more line to tell it the IP address and port to connect to, kind of like what we see Mateus editing here. And so Mateus, with this, now that he'll have his own copy, he'll need to upload that and then execute it with a listener set up and ready to go.
Yeah, so it looks like he's just trying to get the shell working, and it's probably a few steps away from actually getting, having a shell in the box. And then the question will be finding where the flag is.
Right. Yeah. Because then once you get that shell, then you got to go spelunking in the system and looting to see to get the bounty that you're after.
Yeah, and that's always the annoying part, is if you pop a shell and you're like, great, I have a shell, but you have no idea where the flag is, and you're trying to dig through the file system, try to find it.
Yeah, and the like translation for that for me with like red team operations is I can't tell you how many times I've like shelled something and I'm working my way through the environment and I might be, multiple hosts in and I don't have any credentials yet. And I'm always like, why don't I have any credentials? And so I've got to like look for something so I can at least get access back if I need it.
Yeah. This is also a case of like, potentially being prepared to have to go spelunking for this. Also being prepared for having a reverse shell in this kind of situation, because if you're having to deal with, especially with 1 hour remaining, having to try to get your reverse shell working on the fly can be kind of stressful, probably, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely. I know I played Hacker of the Hill that was hosted by Nahamsek, and just knowing that there were a handful of other hackers all gunning for the same stuff that I was, and that I was being watched live on the internet was all quite high pressure for me. It felt like.
Yeah, it's definitely much easier just sitting here and watching them try to hack these boxes than actually going in there and having all the pressure and having things not work and being like, I know that this should work. I don't know why it's not working, and having to figure that out live.
Yeah. I will say though, it was an awesome experience. And I think a lot of these players, they've been on so many times now that they're probably like naturals at this point where they're like, yeah, this is no big deal. So I will say it was a really fun experience getting to stream more and or getting to stream that live. And while I do appreciate being on the host side and not having to solve everything on the fly, it is something that I look forward to doing more in the future. I really want to see this shell connect. I'm so excited. Mateus is there. He's got it configured. I think everything's good.
Running our commands here.
Yeah, I guess just changing it to do the command automatically for him instead of specifying what it is. But yeah, I've always used the the IEX. Sorry, go ahead.
Just so you know, 2 more hints are coming. One is for everyone that are not in the scoreboard yet, and the second one is for Celesian. Or or anyone that gets the second flag. So, one an extra flag for everyone that's not in the scoreboard, and the second flag that is for using after the first flag. Sorry.
Got it. Okay, so I'm looking at the hint that just came in Discord. So there's 2 hints together. The first one is to use the guest account. So we've seen that, and it looks like some of the players have already figured that part out. The second hint is that Active Directory currently has trusted relationships or a trusted relationship. I'm not sure exactly like what that means. I don't know if that means you might be able to do something like ASREP roasting or Kerber roasting, or if that's something completely unrelated.
Yeah, I'm not totally sure.
Kadu's gonna translate. His brain is working in 2 languages at the moment. So use the user guest with the name of the Active Directory to explore the target server, the server that is a target. And the hint you currently Active Directory has trusted relationship. So that is pretty much it. Oh, there you go. He also sent it in both languages here. Nice.
Yeah, so for the second hint, I'm not totally sure. I believe, the box that was popped was the one that was running the XAMPP, I believe, right? Or I'm not sure if that also holds like the Active Directory.
Yeah, I think the XAMPP box, I think it had a .191 IP address, I want to say. And then I think that and I think it was 10, like 10.10.10.191. And I think the LDAP box was .8. something else. So I think they are 2 distinct systems. Excuse me.
Yeah, so you may need to try to pivot onto the other system
Right. Yeah. Great point. And I think that's maybe what Celesian was going for. I'm just going to pop down to check on Celesian real quick, see what they're up to. Oh yeah, cool. So Celesian is setting up Sharphound now, and Sharphound, a favorite of mine. I had a box that I did recently. Maybe it was in Hacker of the Hill on Try Hack Me, but really cool, like running Sharphound and figuring out like the mappings of what the AD entities were, and what could get me to my objective at the end there.
I will keep an eye on Matthias here as they try to debug their PowerShell reverse shell.
That's so rough. Exactly to your point about having things tested and configured and ready to go. It's like it's so rough to be like figuring out, is the configuration bad, or why isn't my thing working in the middle of the CTF?
Yeah, and it's often the little things too that get overlooked that can just break everything. And especially when you're in a situation where you don't have much visibility into the system, it can be hard to tell if your shell is breaking for one reason, or if it was a user error, or if something else is wrong.
Absolutely. So the takeaway here for all of you watching at home is, number one, play a bunch of CTFs, learn things, and then number two, take good notes about what's going on. So in playing number one and playing Hack the Box and Try Hack Me and all other CTFs, you'll build up a good arsenal of tools and you'll have them like ready to go. But then in taking notes, you'll have details about how to use those tools so that when you are joining us on UHC live on a Sunday night, you'll be ready to go, or you'll be able to quickly figure out, here's what I need to change to make the thing work.
Yeah, and we've seen a couple of the contestants taking notes as they go about, of course, the services they're looking at, but you could then take the most important parts of that or anything you learned and put that into a larger database of notes that you can then refer back to later on if you're ever run into a similar situation, rather than just trying to remember what you did to solve the situation last time.
Yes, yeah, and I'm with you in Blue Dragon Sec with the screenshots are not the same as notes for sure. I used to take a bunch of notes in Google Docs, because even with screenshots in the mix, Google Docs would OCR the screenshots, and so you could like kind of search through the screenshots that way. But I then moved over to keeping my notes in a private Git repo. And so what's really great there is I can use something like ripgrep or just regular grep, and I can quickly find like how did I use this tool last time? Or I can look for similar things, right? Like I see a system with LDAP, like what boxes have I done or challenges have I done that have LDAP? And I can search across all of my notes really quickly and then find, what I did, tools that I used, techniques that worked out or didn't work out. And then that helps me, solve things faster.
Yeah, that sort of recognizing that the situation you're in is one that you've dealt with before, or at least one that's similar, can be very important to cracking some of these challenges.
And so what's the RPISec preferred approach for tracking and organizing notes?
Well, one thing we do is we have like a wiki that we can update. I'm not sure how often that actually gets updated practically, but I know at least personally, a lot of us keep our own notes. I have way too many Sublime Text tabs open at any time, if that's any indication.
Yeah, but I like that, right? Is tracking your notes is like text format or markdown or whatever, that makes them easily searchable. And then that can help you find the information that you want quickly.
Yeah, additionally, keeping track of what past challenges there have been. So you can like pull up, oh, this reminds me of that challenge from, let's say, Seesaw or something like that. And you can go back to potentially that challenge, your history in Slack or whatever, if you, of course, have a Slack that lets you see your history, and then maybe see your revelations that you had when trying to solve that challenge as well. It can be useful.
Yeah, very cool. And I know for folks that are interested is like, what note-taking approach might work best for them. There's Katie, I think her name is, Insider PhD, I think is her Twitter handle, or their Twitter handle. But they've done some really cool presentations on how they take notes and organize them as well. So lots of good info out there if you're trying to figure out what's going to work best for you. Let's see. I just saw Celesian was running Bloodhound, but the Python implementation of it, and now they've gone back to WinDAP search. So it looks like now they're maybe looking for different hosts to target. So maybe it didn't work out with the initial host that they were going after. They're kind of walking their way back up the tree, or maybe just trying the name, the host name, as opposed like the FQDN as opposed to the IP address potentially. But let's see if Bloodhound comes out with anything cool here. And specifically about taking notes and Bloodhound, I always have to remember how to do the setup because there's like Neo4j, and then there's like some other aspects about how to set up and use Bloodhound. And it's not, for me, it's not as always straightforward as just like running the commands. There's like a couple extra steps in there. And that's one place where I'm very thankful for my note taking.
Yeah, sometimes also if you just have like a large bash history or shell history, you can just search for the last time you ran the command, which is hopefully, ran successfully, and then go from there, especially if it's hard to keep track of all the flags you need.
Yeah, great.
Really complex tools.
Great point. I do that in my CTF VMs. I like remove, or I set the history file size to like some massive number. And then there's another thing you can do with your prompt command, and you can chain like history commands so that every time you run a command, it immediately gets written into the history file instead of buffering. And so that way you don't risk losing a command as opposed to like a shell dying or something.
Oh, that's nice for having multiple different shells as well that you want to like jump between. But yeah, sometimes you just control R and you're like cross your fingers and hope that you still have the history for whatever SSH command or like tunnel or SQL map or whatever you were using.
Yeah, those specific instances are very common ones for me where I need to go back and look, right? Because I'm like, oh, like SQL map, it's got, I did this one thing with it before, but how did I do that? And like, how did I set up this SSH tunnel before? Those are like two specific use cases.
Yeah. Also putting writing an actual shell script and then editing your command in there rather than just doing it on the command line, because then you actually have a file you can come back to later that's like, here is the final version of this command that was successful, versus just having like 20 different versions in your history, many of which might not actually run the way that you want.
Yeah, great point there. And I have like all of my directory structures, from all of the CTFs and everything. So going back and being able to look at scripts that I've written or payloads or whatever, really helpful as well. And I see folks talking about Obsidian in the chat, and I've seen a couple people on Twitter talk about Obsidian as well. I've not used it, but it looks like it's pretty cool. And then also I saw Briskets is here with us. What up, Briskets? Good to see you. Thanks for joining us. And yes, the shell option shopped dash s histappend for appending. You can do some other things in there as well, like ignore duplicates or ignore commands that start with spaces. So for an example, in this situation here, we see that Celesian is passing a hash with some of the commands, right? And so it would be really bad if Celesian's system got hacked and this was for a company and somebody was like, oh, here's a credential that I can just use immediately. And so in the case of a shell, like a bash shell, you could start that evil winrm command with a space and then do the evil winrm. And if you've got your shell configured appropriately, it would not log that.
Yeah, that was actually funny story, but at one point a friend of mine left their computer unlocked, so of course I was joking like, oh, who knows what could have happened while you were out of the room. And they're like, oh, it would have been in the command log. And it's like, well, you can put a space on it and it won't. And he like tried it out and freaked out. I was like, wait, I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's one of the first things that I do when I get a shell is generally to remove the shell logging, right? So you can like unset the hist file, or you can set it to dev null or do whatever. There's a couple different ways to handle it, but But basically, if I'm on a system that I'm not supposed to be on, I don't want people to know that I was there. And speaking of, we see that Ode was there, that directory listing.
Yeah, leaving a calling card. When CTF gives you a writable directory, you always see a few funny files being created.
That's awesome. So, Ode, you should have been playing this week. Where are you at? Oh, amazing. Let's see. So we're watching Mateus currently, and I guess Mateus still doesn't have that interactive shell, which is a real bummer. I mean, I know sometimes I get on systems where I can get command execution, but like doing something like IEX doesn't work out. But at least here you've got PHP file upload, so you could do like a more fully featured PHP payload that could get you an interactive shell through the browser.
Yeah, I think it might be a case of, it just being Windows, making it much trickier. If you're very familiar with like Linux reverse shells and you haven't done a whole lot with Windows, even given this sort of access, it still might be a struggle to get a fully featured shell if you're not familiar with ones out there or easy methods to do so. I know I'd probably take a while to actually get a good shell working on Windows compared to Linux, much faster.
Yeah, and to your point here, there's at least one layer of complexity being added, right? Because as we see in the address bar from Mateus, there's the URL encoding, there's %20, plus if you're interacting with a shell, then you've also got your like quote escaping and character escaping. So then you've got to deal with different layers of encoding all mashed up together in one spot.
Yeah, when you have an application where the data coming in is mutated in different ways, it can be very tricky to get things working correctly when you don't have the visibility into, it's % encoding it when it gets passed to the shell. That's why everything I tried hasn't worked. So potentially maybe you want to try to turn on more burst logging or something like that in your shell. That sometimes I'll do because PHP won't have that printed by default.
Yeah, great point. And getting that verbosity added can save you a ton of headache in debugging, right? Because you're potentially debugging more than one challenge, more than one issue. And so any feedback that you can get as to like what's actually going wrong and why your thing's not working as intended can get you on the track that you need to be on. In this case, it's like I'm kind of bummed that Mateus hasn't gotten that interactive shell yet. He's right there. It's like it's one step away.
Yeah, it's probably one of the worst feelings is just being so close to having your, you have code execution. It's just trying to make use of it to be a real struggle.
Yeah. I don't mean to jinx this, but if we go to My Donut also has an interactive shell, has gotten a reverse shell, has the PHP upload, and is now like in the terminal. I don't think that they found the flag yet, but I think they're pretty close, or they're at least on the system. So that's
yeah.
good.
It looks like they managed to pop a shell, and so now their task is going to be finding where the flag is on the system, and they've got 30 minutes to do so.
So Amor, could we jump over to My Donut screen?
Yep.
And so we'll see. Hopefully the connection holds up here. A few times that we've gone to broadcast My Donut screen, it gets a little blurry or pixelated for us. So hopefully I didn't jinx it, and we'll see some cool stuff here. so My Donut finding that Ode was there.
Yes, unsurprising content to that file.
And now looking through the directory, they've got a shellless system, so that's definitely helpful.
Is this the time to break out the tree command?
Yes. Tree, and then
the first thing everyone does to feel like a hacker on a Windows box before they actually learn to do anything is run tree.
Yes. Yeah, Thug Crowd had a tweet last week that was like, if you're trying to find a file on a system, do tree and then grep for the file name. Let's see. So they let's see. Oh yeah, there's Tree. Yos. They're in the local admin directory. Looking around. Oh, nope. Jumping down to temp, maybe. Nope. So yeah, here with this shell, I would be aiming for getting the first flag at least. Every time you get some new level of access, at least in a CTF like this, you want to start looking around for flags. That's like probably the first thing to do.
Yeah, but of course the question is, where did the challenge author put the flag? Is there more to the challenge that they need to do? Like, for example, are they currently, I can't actually tell if they have system or not. I think so, right? Because it seemed like before that the PHP shells were being run as system. So potentially using that to access some parts of the system you might normally not be able to. Unfortunately, we didn't see where the flag was, did we?
I did catch it in Celesian's screen very briefly, but I also managed to jinx it, and now we've got a blurry screen from my donut. So we're gonna jump to somebody else.
Clear it up.
Yes. All right. So there's a 30% chance of cloudiness with my donut screen. I'm moving into meteorology from this point. That was my dad joke. Everybody, you're welcome. Yeah. Let's see. So, okay, it looks like my donut's going to pull down some static nmap binaries. So this will be cool. You can do some port scanning. You can also do ncat for throwing yourself a nicer shell, potentially.
Yeah, pressure is definitely on, though, to find that flag, because it might not be clear to them if the flag is on that box or if there's another step. So the question is, should they spend their time looking for the flag, or should they be trying to find the next target, which might have the flag?
Yeah, excellent point. And to your point, Amy, exactly. We saw Celesian pull down ripgrep first before anything else. That was like the first thing that they did, I think. Also, I think that Celesian just got another flag. I'm going to pop down there and check.
You are correct. Celesian is now with 600 points in the scoreboard, and there is around 30 minutes down the hole now for the end of the championship, with just Celesian on the scoreboard.
We've got at least one other potential challenger here, at least for the first flag.
Nice. Who's that?
Well, my donut, who is the shell that we were talking about.
Oh, right. Yep. Yeah, so Celesian now submitting that second flag, jumping out to a heavy lead. Those of you who bet on Celesian, you're in good shape right now. So now, let's see, I guess Celesian's going to generate a meterpreter shell, maybe? I like the file name, a.exe. We've already seen one A binary tonight. Now we're going to see a second one. All right. So yeah.
Do we know which box Celesian is currently operating on? Did they pivot to a new IP?
Yeah, I think that they are on. I think this host where they're as Stoke is, I think, the Active Directory server. What I'm expecting is a domain controller. So setting up Chisel tunnel, and then I guess they're going to be able to send the file through the Chisel tunnel. It looks like. Let's see. Yes, Chisel in a Chisel. It's Inception with Chisel.
Yeah, and that happens fairly often when you have to get multiple paths through your different services, and you end up with very complicated infrastructure, which can break very easily. You have SSH tunnels, or in this case, Chisel.
Yeah, I've seen some gnarly proxy chains configs in my day.
And then once something breaks, you're hoping it wasn't something halfway through your connection.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. At that point, when you've got so many hops, it's hard to know necessarily where something was. I think Oreo, you're asking what Ode put as the message. I think it was just a text file that said Ode was here.
Yeah, we did see one of the contestants print out the contents of that, and unsurprisingly, it was just Ode is here.
Looks like Celesian backed out of his shell, but then got it back with the evil WinRM. And I like in this case, I would. They're trying to do two things at once, right? They're trying to do the file write of the a.exe binary and then execute it all in one shot. I would just pull the file down first, make sure that you get the file onto the box, and then run it. Like, it's okay. It doesn't have to be all in one shot. You're allowed to do 2 commands. Nobody's judging.
Everything has to be in one line. If your exploit isn't a single command line, you're not doing it right.
Right, okay.
JK.
Yeah, if your exploit can't fit in a tweet, then it's no good. Let's see. Nice. GoPro Slow Yo told us that Bert's on through RDP. How do you know that, GoPro Slow Yo? I did jump over to Bert, and they are indeed on through RDP. Tell us your secrets, GoPro Slow Yo. Maybe the Brazilian live is showing Bert.
Yeah. So it looks like he's approaching it through the RDP. We've also got someone else on the shell. Now both of them are trying to find that flag and get themselves in the top 3 here.
Yeah, and in this case, I love it. Just blindly running the tools on the box, no problem. What's this PowerShell script
box?
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I'll just run it anyways. What's funny though is in this case, I'm not especially familiar with Windows Search and Explorer, but I feel like if it were me on this box, I would go to the C directory and then I would type in UHC left curly brace in the search and then see if it found any files.
Yeah, see if anything was indexed in when other people were accessing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh man, so the joke about doing like tree and then piping it to grep to find a file, I replied with a joke that was like, I like to CD into every directory and then like manually list the files when I'm looking for a specific file. But unfortunately, that was a joke, and this is what we're seeing Bert do, which there it was. Okay, so Bert did do that. Bert did the search with UHC.
Ricardo is now on the scoreboard.
Whoa, awesome. Let's check that out. Let's bounce down to Ricardo.
Oh my God, thank you, Jesus.
Well, now the pressure's really on for these other two, because with very little time left, whoever finds the third, whoever gets the first flag third might be in a good position.
Apparently, we have someone here that gave up. I think it was Wade.
Oh yeah, Wade did drop. Yeah, there were Wade was in that 6th spot, and that's a bummer because Wade has won multiple times in the past. Okay, so we're watching Ricardo as the Portuguese pronunciation, or Ricardo for pretty much the rest of the world, and they have got their shell as well. I'm curious. I don't see in the scroll. I see a UHC.txt there, right at the top of that last shell. So for folks that are watching, that seems like a very interesting file name, potentially, folks that are playing. And ngrok as well. Amy, any experience with ngrok?
Oh.
I've used it a little bit, not too much though.
Bert is also in the scoreboard now, so we have the 3. we have at least 3 players in the scoreboard now.
Yeah, and looks like clicking through all the directories actually worked out. Found the flag that way. So there we go. That was pretty intense coming down there to who would get the first flag. But it's not, if you go in here and you get lucky, you could potentially pull off getting the second flag, because we've got 30 minutes left. It's not unreasonable to finish the first flag and get the second flag before the end of the competition.
Absolutely. Total possibility. And, one of the things that we kind of touched on earlier was that different players have different skill sets. So you might have somebody that's like really good at Windows post-access stuff, and now that they've got a shell on the box, they might tear it up and take off running, whereas the other players are still trying to figure their way around.
Yeah, I mean, I would expect to at least see my donut get the first flag at some point soon here.
Right, yeah, because my donuts had that shell, and they've got the the reliable callback, so that's good. and I just popped in to check, and they are digging around. Although they're going after the Windows SAM stuff at this point, so maybe they've abandoned going for the flag, and instead they're just going for more ponage.
They might think at this point the only way to win a prize is to get the second flag.
Yeah,
so by just trying to focus their time into popping the second flag and just ignore the first one, because the second flag is worth more, I believe, right? So
right.
Get that would still put you in the top 3, even if you didn't get the first one.
Although I think in this case, the current scoreboard setup doesn't expose the second flag until you've solved the first one.
Really? I did not realize that. Well, that might complicate things.
Definitely. I typically am in favor of all of the challenges being available at any point. I've had that approach before where I end up, just trying to root everything and then working my way backwards to look for flags that I missed along the way.
Yeah, it would be a terrible feeling to get a later flag and not be able to submit it because you haven't solved an earlier one.
Right.
So I definitely think that that should be avoided if possible.
Yeah.
But, you can't always prevent people from doing things out of order.
Yep. And I guess with the right access, you would still potentially be able to find the earlier flags, and then you would just need to figure out which one is which. And I think we typically have 3 flags. There might be 4 for tonight, but at least if you've got 2 or 3 flags to sort out, it's not too bad. Just copy and paste a few times until the scoreboard takes one.
Yeah, for sure.
I see. Okay, so I'm still watching Ricardo, and I'll bounce up to Bert, but I just saw Ricardo do a really funny thing, which was to look for Mimikatz already on the system. And so it's that same thing that we talked about where other players have gotten somewhere and they've done something, and now you're taking advantage of that tooling that's available.
Yeah, and that can definitely be something to look for, even if it doesn't give you like a bypass to skip some of the challenge. Looking for artifacts from other people's exploits can give you hints towards what they did to do their exploit, and that might help you craft yours.
Yeah. And IPSEC has his latest Hack the Box video has some notes about looking at timestamps. And that might be something that's applicable here as well, where you're in this like shared environment. You get on a system that other players have already been on. If you start sorting sorting the files by timestamp, you'll see like what was added and what was changed recently. And then that can give you, and maybe even what was accessed recently. And that can give you insight as to like files of interest or places to spend your time looking.
Yeah, and even if it wasn't another competitor who, touched the file, it might have been the author who, modified the flag last or something, and that might help you find that flag file faster.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, just like we have seen that players have had a shell and then they haven't found that first flag, that might be a way to help you quickly find the flag if you're, not especially familiar with the environment, is by looking at the timestamps on files. Let's see. Okay, so we are currently viewing Ricardo, and okay. So there looks like they're setting up Mimikatz on the box, or they're about to. They're prepping it. Cool. I'm gonna pop back to Celesian to see how he is doing with his progress, because he has that second flag already, and it looks like he is setting up another Evil WinRM shell with the same access through Stoke. Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see if you can pull off a third flag in the next 20 minutes here.
Yeah, it looks like maybe there are some network issues, because it looks like the tunnel is like hanging and not connecting the Evil WinRM shell. But we'll see if it connects. I definitely think that Celesian's pretty close. There's probably just some Privesk. Celesian frustrated because the shell is not connecting. Yeah, I think there's probably just one more step for Privesk to get the domain admin. At which point then Celesian should be able to get that final flag, is my guess.
Yeah, that'd probably be the next thing to look at in this sort of chain of exploits.
I remember that we saw Celesian doing some Bloodhound stuff, but I can't remember if that was before he got the second flag or after. And if it was before, maybe with the second flag, there's maybe some new access where revisiting the Bloodhound approach might be valuable. But of course, you got to be able to get your shell to begin with. I saw the last thing we saw Celesian doing was generating interpreter payload. And so I wonder if something happened and we see Celesian backing out of all of the shells and connections at this point. So I wonder if something happened to the infrastructure.
Yeah, I'm not totally sure because I see a few other people saying GG at this point. Maybe it's far enough into, like, there's not enough time left for people to catch up with the current top 3. So maybe people are calling it a bit early.
Could be. I've definitely had that feeling of defeat where it's like time's running out and there's no way that I'm going to get up to the top of the leaderboard in time. But I still want to play through the challenges. So it's pretty rare that I'll bail out before the competition actually ends.
Yeah, usually it depends on how much sleep I've gotten. Because if I stayed up all night, I might just call it and say like, I'll go to sleep now. But with 20 minutes left, there still is a good amount of time, especially if you're getting closer to like the second flag, for example. It's not impossible. It's especially compared to the entire time of this event today, there's still a good chunk of it left.
Oh, apparently Celesian dropped out.
Yeah, I see. We saw Celesian close out of all of his things, and then he just went to like watching the stream, and he left the channel. So
maybe there was some call with like a ref or something.
Yeah, or maybe something happened with because that last shell wasn't connecting, and so I don't know if maybe Celesian was like, I don't know how to fix this, and bailed. Delta asked, has there ever been a flag hidden on a Windows box where it was hidden in a folder whose attribute had been changed to hidden? I don't know that we've seen that in UHC at least. It definitely seems like a valid CTF challenge to me, like exploring the file system attributes. I've seen alternate data streams back in the day, and that's kind of like another way that you can hide content on Windows files. And then, with like a lot of hacking challenges, you'll see like permissions, right? And so you need to get access to a particular account in order to get into the directory. It's not so much necessarily that the directory is hidden, but it's just that you need to get a specific account level access in order to then have permissions to read the file contents. Let's see. Oh, there's the interactive shell from Mateus. I know, Marina, you're still streaming my donut.
Yeah, it looks like he's still trying to find that flag file using different searching tools here.
Right. Yeah. Finster. Nice.
Getting a little bogged down, maybe trying to search the entire file system. Depending on where the flag actually is, it might make sense to target certain directories first, and that might be more effective than trying to search through the entire file system, which might be slow, or it might take a long time before it actually hits the files you're looking for. Yeah.
And so you're right. And I think that was actually kind of what Mateus was doing previously, because they had users, right? And that, to me, that seems like a pretty good directory to start with.
Yeah, that's probably where I would look first, is either the current user or any other users, like home directory and their documents, that kind of thing.
And Retro in the chat saying they hate ADS, alternate data streams, because you spend a bunch of time searching for a flag on Hack the Box, and I'm totally there with you. Super frustrating to like dig around. That happened to me on the Hacker of the Hill Try Hack Me rooms, especially in the first box. The flags were in these like really weird places, and it was the easiest approach was like to just root the system and then go searching for the flags.
I do want to say I appreciate Mateus's use of the Windows NatCap here to get a classic Netcat-E shell. on
Big O's
the window
point.
spot.
Big O's is now in the scoreboard as well with 200 points.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Amy, I'm with you. I have and it looks like Mateus is gonna get this flag. No, paste the wrong thing. Here, guys. Is cat?
No,
Yeah,
that's not a thing. You have to use type.
or a PowerShell.
Yeah, there we go.
Woo! Flag. Awesome.
So yeah, the flag ended up being in the one of the users. So searching just the users seemed like, worked pretty well.
Yes.
Excellent.
Right. It's good to see, even though we're running out of time here, a lot of people at least being able to close out the first flag.
Yeah, and then we see the struggle that we all face of too many browser tabs open and the system struggling.
We have learned something with UHC past editions is that you can never lose hope until the 5 last minutes. We've already seen people submitting like the root flag in the last 30 seconds, like literally the last 30 seconds. That's
Oh yeah, it can come down to the line. I've solved the challenge literally a minute before the end of the challenge, or before the end of the CTF before. So don't give up. If you feel like you're getting there and you've only got a few minutes left, well, you still might succeed.
I'm looking at Celesian's screen. Celesian is zoomed in on me on UHC. Okay, I'm leaving. No, bail out. Nobody needs to see that.
look at that cutie little face laughing.
It's awful. I love it. I appreciate the trolling. It was amazing. Oh, we're all famous now. All right. So let's see. I think, are all of the players on the scoreboard at this point?
Not all of them. Let me see who's not there. My donut is not there yet.
Got it.
Yeah, it seems to like the last person who's still in the room is that. But they've had a shell for a while, so they might just be trying to poke around at some of the other things rather than look for that first flag.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think they're just kind of going for like more hacks as opposed to finding.
Yeah, because if they spend the time to try to go for the second flag, they might be more likely to get both of them at the end rather than spending all the time looking for the first. So that could be a bit of a game strategy here, or metagaming it a little bit.
Absolutely. And for the folks that are with us, we have, it looks like about just over 10 minutes left. And so when the game ends here in the next 10-ish minutes, we will then raid into the Brazilian live, and there will be English and Portuguese, but we'll go through the solutions for all of the challenges. So we'll learn what the challenges were and how they were intended to be solved. And also Celesian will speak to how he solved the ones that he was able to get, or whoever ends up winning. I shouldn't call it ahead of time because we could totally have somebody that...
Yeah, we've got 10 more minutes here. Someone might go and grab the second and third flag.
Absolutely. Yep. So I jumped the gun. I hope somebody proves me wrong and comes out with like all of the flags. Right.
Maybe someone's just been saving the flags, waiting for the last second. We just happened to miss them getting it.
Yeah, and we had a player that used to do that, Alfonso, and he would just like sit on flags and then like dump all the flags at the end. But then the players got to be like too fast, and so he stopped doing that because
yeah, that seems kind of dangerous when the time is used to break ties.
Yeah,
if you're too slow dumping your flags, you might end up not getting your actual place.
In a former job that I had, I worked in the San Francisco office, and we played a CTF against the Los Angeles office. And in playing the CTF, we organized I thought fairly well. Like people were taking the challenges that they were best at, but we were also kind of sitting on flags, and so we would just stay like 5 to 10 points ahead of the LA office throughout the entire competition. And then when it got to be 30 minutes left, we dumped all of the flags that we had, and we just like skyrocketed in the Delta, and the LA office stopped playing.
Oh no, you crushed their spirits.
Yeah, we demoralized them.
I had a kind of similar story, but it turned out not as well for us, where we had many flags. We'd actually been able to like dump their flag store or something. This was like a small CTF somewhere. And at one point we tried to submit them all at once, and it actually ended up crashing the service because we were submitting so many. And it basically dropped all of our flags, and then the game ended. So we didn't actually get like any of the scores.
And Bert setting the background on the box.
So on the last 10 minutes of tonight's match, the scoreboard is probably down already because the scoreboard goes down in the last 10 minutes. So we now have Celesian at 600 points. So Celesian first place. Then Ricardo and Bert and Bigos and Mateos, everyone with 200 points. That's the easy flag. But here on UHC, the advantage always goes to the first one to submit the flag. So even if everyone has the same points, still, since Ricardo submitted first, then he is in second place, and then Bert and Bigos and Mateos. So if nothing changes, which it's a possibility. Celesian gets first place, Ricardo second, and third is Bert. But as we've said before, UHC is filled with surprises. So I will not say anything.
Get the second flag right now and jump right up.
Right. Yeah. If any player gets this second flag, they will end up overtaking second place. Definitely a possibility. Amazing about the deluge of flags crashing the service and then losing all of your flags. That's awful. I had a CTF that I ran once where the players tried to sit on flags and then dump them at the end, and they did solve. I think they solved like all of the challenges, but 2 of the challenges they did not record the flag correctly, and so when they went to go submit it, they didn't have the right flag technically, and the scoreboard didn't know the difference between the fact that they were off by 1 character or something, and so they ended up not taking good notes, and therefore not being able to go back and resolve the challenges quickly to get the actual correct flag, and they end up getting like second place. And so a team that did solve all of the challenges end up getting first place, and so it was really funny.
Yeah, it's always a risk if you're hoarding flags. So I just recommend submitting them. Lay out your cards.
Yeah,
show everyone else. I pop these services.
Yeah, I tend to do it right away, just because I don't want to forget something or miss something, and it would be devastating to me if I was like, I solved this and I didn't get the credit for it. Plus, like, I always like watching the scoreboard update live while I'm playing CTF. Sometimes it like gives me like an extra boost when I see somebody coming up behind me and I'm like, oh no, like I'm about to lose my place. It like pushes me to like focus better and work harder.
Yeah, and then there's always the sad thing of depending on time zones, there might not be many teams awake at one point, so you might get a bunch of flags, go up into like first place, go to sleep, come back, and you're in like 30th. Yeah.
I played the first time that I went to Wild West Hacking Fest, I played CTF, and there was a team that I think it was like 7 people, and they stayed up all night playing, and the scoreboard looked very different the following day.
Yeah, it's always a bit sad, especially for the newer people who haven't experienced that, and they're so excited to be way up there, and then in the morning, all the other teams, like the European teams, wake up and they solve all the challenges.
Yeah. I can't remember the last time I played a CTF through the entire weekend, though. What does your CTF schedule look like?
Oh, well, it used to be like that all the time. Back when I was getting into it, I would do every CTF I could get my hands on. But now I've started having to prioritize and like pick a couple CTFs in a year that I want to actually spend an entire weekend looking at. Otherwise, I'll just like poke at things, or if someone's like, "Oh, you might like this challenge."
Bert, if you're listening in, I just heard in the Brazilian live stream that if you follow the right path in 5 minutes, you can get the next flag.
Ooh, that sounds like a challenge.
You can do it, Bert. We got faith in you. And so, Amy, what's like at the top of your list right now for CTFs? Which through the year, what CTFs are you most excited about?
Well, I usually always try to, help the team out with any DEF CON qualifiers, because DEF CON's always sort of, it's like the big exciting competition, and if you get into that, it's a lot of fun. Although unfortunately, the last year, we couldn't go in person, so either DEF CON quals or any of the other qualifiers. And then also there's a lot of CTFs that are just very challenging, and depending on your skill levels, if you've done 6 years of CTF, you might be interested in some of the ones like CCC, CTF, the like OCTF. There's a lot of ones out there. You can check on CTF time. It's usually a pretty good indicator of the quality, although it can change year to year. So sometimes you can be a little disappointed by a CTF.
Yeah, that's totally understandable. I personally, I would remember I would play CTFs, and I had some friends here in Austin that we'd play together, and they were, really talented folks. And then we'd be playing and we'd be having fun, and then we'd see like Dragon Sector on the scoreboard, or we'd see PPP, and we'd be like, oh, like,
yeah, well, you have to not let it get to you too much, especially when, if it's, you don't have a huge team, or you're playing by yourself, or you're playing with just a few friends. You can just kind of focus on what you're learning and what you're getting out of the CTF, rather than it just being purely competitive, because they've gotten really competitive. It's very hard to keep up with the top teams.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have the exact point there of like, really it's about learning and just improving at what you want to improve at. So I think keeping that in the forefront as you work is the way to go.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing when it comes to CTFs, really, is, there's some level of personal growth in all of the challenges. You can learn something new or apply skills, practice them. So I think that's one of the major benefits of playing CTF. Even if you can't dedicate entire weekends to staying up the entire time and eating nothing but pizza and Monster.
I definitely appreciate CTF as an opportunity to learn new tools and try new things. And so that's how I've looked at it as well. There's only a few times that I've played CTF competitively, and in those situations, it's usually just me playing. So like the last CTF that I really played competitively was the DerbyCon OSINT CTF, and that was like an individual one. So that one was cool. But yeah, it is always an opportunity for learning and getting to try new tools or find new tools that are available that you can then add to your kit. And then that, gives you something new to use in the future when you come across a particular challenge, whether it be in a professional setting or a CTF setting.
Yeah, something I recommend doing is a postmortem after any CTF that you've, dedicated a good amount of time to. Look back at it, find out the solutions for the things you were working on, figure out how you can improve your workflow or your tool usage to help you get to those solutions in the future.
Yeah.
We're going for the last 2 minutes of tonight's match, everyone. And apparently we have no one else that submitted a flag. We still have 2 minutes, but just reminding everyone, we are gonna give all the prizes to the 3 top players of tonight's match, and we're also gonna have the interview with the winner, and also the walkthrough with the challenge with the challenges creator as well, all in the Brazilian live stream, and we're gonna have that in both languages, Portuguese and English, at the same time. So stay with us. You don't have to do nothing. You just have to stay there in the chat with us, because we're gonna raid from our channel to theirs. So just stay in the chat, and we're gonna be transported pretty soon to the Brazilian live stream.
Dope. And then we'll get all the answers.
Yeah, that's always one of my favorite. Well, one of the fun parts of a CTF is at the very end when everyone comes together in IRC or Discord or something like that, and everyone's just like, "Oh, this was such a great challenge. You know, I didn't solve it, but I had a lot of fun." And other people are like, "Well, here's how I went about it." And then the challenge author's like, "Wait, that wasn't the intended solution."
Yep. And we do get that here on UHC as well. The Kadu will be like, "That was not how I thought the challenge was going to be solved."
Yeah, so it's always fun to see people's approaches.
We are